afternoon, everybody. How we doing? Spectre here on the 5x5 channel here on this now 29th day of December. Hopefully you guys are doing well wherever you may be tuning in. We are up on all platforms today, over on Twitch, over on YouTube, D Live. We're over on the Foxhole app as well. So good to have you, depending on which platform you may be on. And just as a quick and dirty pleasant reminder, make sure that you get signed up and are subscribed, liked, all that good stuff on all the various platforms. You never know when we may lose a platform. For those that followed me in the morning show and that here, know that this week was we lost one of the platforms. I'm going to guess you guys can probably gather which one exactly that was. But nonetheless, we continue on. So that being said, appreciate you guys being here this afternoon. This is the last broadcast of the year here on the 5x5 channel. We will be back next Wednesday as per normal, starting off 2022, and lots of ground to cover here today as well. Good to see John Jordan in-house, keeping track of things over on the YouTube side. Christopher Hoydak, however you say your name. Sorry if I butchered it there. Kimberly Sizemore Manor, Rich Mello. It's my world over on the D Live side. Is that just saying? A couple of you guys hanging out over there as well. Willow Lady Zero and Reclaim the Law. Good to see you from across the pond. I take it that DD must not be broadcasting at the moment, and we're getting a few of you guys over here now. Appreciate it, and perhaps maybe we'll see more of you guys if indeed he is broadcasting, and immediately thereafter. So that being said, let's hit it here this afternoon. Lots in store. I'll start off with this piece out of out west here in the United States. Tens of thousands powerless as snow piles up in Placer, Nevada counties in California. Apparently, they had a little bit of a gobsmacker of a snowstorm out there here in recent days. This a piece from yesterday afternoon. Says in Nevada and Placer counties, tens of thousands of Pacific Gas and electric customers, there we go, let's try that, have been left powerless as temperatures drop and more severe weather comes our way. PG&E, gotta love our favorite utility company out that way. So there's one local fire district is calling for a local emergency declaration because first responders are having so much trouble getting to calls for service. The heavy snow coming down is hitting the foothill communities with a knockout punch, snapping trees and downing power lines. Snowplows were busy keeping roads clear as Nevada City and Grass Valley streets were left in the dark. PG&E crews could be seen assessing the damage block by block. Just been kind of hunkered down and just been making do with what we got, Nevada City resident Jeff Ward said. Ward decided to turn his power outage into an opportunity. His home is one of thousands with no electricity. He decided to barbecue a makeshift meal in the snow. Interesting. Says it kills two birds with one stone kind of thing, Ward said. You get heat in, you get food cooking. Christian Gott and his family came for a visit from San Francisco. He decided to brave the freezing night instead of daring to drive home. I'm sort of a city boy, and I'm not too proud to say that if it looks iffy, I usually err on the side of caution, Gott said. And there we see some of the pictures from the storm that hit out that way. The Forest Hill Fire Protection District is now requesting Placer County declare a local disaster emergency because the power outage and downed tree limbs limiting first responder access to homes. We're not expecting power back in this community for upwards of a week. Forest Hill Fire District spokesperson John Michelini said first responders are having a difficulty reaching calls because the number of trees and power lines that are down. There is no exact timeline for when PG&E could have power restored to the region. As of Tuesday morning, despite crews making some progress, PG&E says tens of thousands of customers remain in the dark across several counties. The number without power in El Dorado is 21,000, Nevada 28,000, Placer 9,800, Sierra 1,200, Amador 8,200, and Calaveras 9,000. So what a time to be without power. Perhaps when you have a couple feet of snow sitting out there on your deck and can't get out anywhere. So hopefully, folks, key takeaway out of all this, have backup resources, have wood or wood stoves, things of that nature on hand. Certainly have batteries, candles, all that typical stuff that we should have already. And of course, have plenty of other means to feed and heat yourself in the event it is that cold. So aside from that, here this afternoon, Insider Papers got this piece. China is holding thousands of people under secret residential surveillance system. Interesting. We're going to take a little bit of a round tripper around the old marble here today. According to Al Jazeera, campaigners claim that China's systemization, arbitrary, and secret detention by holding thousands of people under residential surveillance at a designated location, an RSDL. According to Safeguard Defenders, a rights organization based in Spain, as many as 27,208 to 56,963 people have gone through China's RSDL system since 2013, citing data from the Supreme People's Court and the testimony of survivors and lawyers. These high-profile cases obviously attract a lot of attention, but they shouldn't detract from the fact that there's no transparency. Collecting data that is available and analyzing the trends, the estimate is that every year 4,000 to 5,000 people are disappeared into the RSDL system alone, said Michael Castor, a co-founder of Safeguard Defenders, Al Jazeera reported. Castor estimated that between 10 and 15,000 people would pass through the system by 2020, up from 500 in 2013. Among those named are well-known figures such as artist Ai Weiwei and human rights lawyers Wang Yu and Wang Quanzhang, who were detained during China's 2015 crackdown on human rights defenders. Other foreigners who have gone through RSDL include Swedish activist Peter Dahlin, co-founder of Safeguard Defenders, and Canadian missionaries Kevin and Julia Garrett, who were accused of espionage in 2014. According to William Ni, a research and advocacy coordinator at China Human Rights Defenders, the use of the extrajudicial detention system has progressed from an exception in its early days to a more widely used tools. Think of that. Of course, having their surveillance systems net in place, and if you're not following the rules, and of course, well, you just get disappeared for a little while. Maybe you get re-educated, maybe you don't. Or maybe they just rip your organs out and sell them to the highest bidder. You know, whichever they prefer. Says before, when Ai Weiwei was taken away, they had to make an excuse that it was really about his business or a tax issue or something like that. So there's this trend a decade or two ago where they would use a pretense to detain someone when the real reason was their public participation or their political views, said Ni, as per the report. Members of the Communist Party, state employees, and anyone involved in public affairs are held in a parallel system known as Luigi. According to the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, an estimated 10 to 20,000 people have been detained in Luigi each year since its inception in 2018. Both the RSDL and Luigi conditions have been described as torture, and inmates are held without the right to legal counsel. Survivors of both systems have reported sleep deprivation, isolation, solitary confinement, beatings, and forced stress positions, according to multiple rights organizations. According to the report, inmates in some cases may be placed in the infamous tiger chair, which restricts limb movement for days at a time. According to the report, RSDL, Luigi, and similar extrajudicial procedures have quote-unquote systematized arbitrary and secret detention. And I bring that up to highlight this particular fact. What we have now witnessed since January 6th by the more than, what are we up to, about 500 people sitting in D.C. at the moment? It almost appears as if we are doing the exact same thing. Political prisoners, because they dared to set foot on Capitol grounds, and because they have perhaps just a little bit different political view than, say, the mafia that runs DC, well, you got to pay the price. Held without charges, trumped up charges at that, none of which are insurrection, most of which are misdemeanors for trespassing and things of that nature. Never mind the fact that the Capitol Police were holding doors open and all that good stuff. But nonetheless, as described here in China, I question whether or not we have our own version of that here playing out on the United States grounds and at here in DC as well. So aside from that, that begs the question, Russia or China, which is the greater threat? This out of Liberty Nation news here today. And of course, you think back to when Trump was in office at the beginning. It's Russia, 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 collusion this, collusion that. It's all been debunked at this point. Even the Washington Post has had to go back and retouch up some articles of the past and say they couldn't stand by them because it's been debunked. A 4-year coup against Trump and try to thwart every effort possible. But the question is it really Russia or is China the threat? Well, the U.S. finds itself with finite resources and two major national security threats. So how can the Biden admin best allocate its assets to counter both Russia and China successfully? Well, the decision requires making judgments about which of the two global competitors is the greater hazard, determining which needs immediate attention and which can be handled with a longer-term approach. Observing the behavior of both Russia and China provides the clue to which is which. This article is a first in a series to address the more significant threat, why that adversary is the greater threat, and what the U.S. can do about it. A 2018 RAND Corporation study titled Russia is a Rogue, Not a Peer, China is a Peer, Not a Rogue, describes a dangerous geopolitical and geoeconomics playing field. According to the RAND researchers, aka think tank, the former Trump administration's national security strategy accurately characterized the two adversary states as working to challenge American power, influence, and interests, attempting to erode American security and prosperity. They are determined to make economies less free and less fair, to grow their militaries, and to control information and repress their societies and expand their influence. Today, they are fielding military capabilities designed to deny American access in times of crisis and to contest our ability to operate freely in critical commercial zones during peacetime. To compare the two U.S. adversaries' behaviors, Rand explained, Russia assassinates its opponents at home and abroad. Russia interferes in foreign elections, subverts foreign democracies, and works to undermine European and Atlantic institutions. On the other hand, China's growing impact on countries it wishes to influence is pernicious and malevolent, but with the mask of positive influence on the world order. Again, from the RAND analysis, China has even become the largest contributor to UN peacekeeping operations, along with positive activities, quote, in trade, investment, and development assistance. These attributes make China a less immediate threat, but a much greater long-term challenge, end quote. Now, what should be particularly of concern for the Biden national security team is the conclusion of the RAND comparison between Russia and China. In the near future, Russian influence can be managed with deterrence, sanctions, information operations, and alliance relationships that held the Soviet Union at bay for half a century. China cannot be contained. Its military predominance in East Asia will grow over time. The relentless growth will require the U.S. to invest more heavily and accept more risk to support current commitments. And I guess I'll pause right there for just 1 second and say Russia, right? You know, they absolutely loved the Cold War, and we're sad to see it go when those walls broke down. The destruction of the Soviet Union or USSR into what is now the Soviet Union, and of course the balkanization of all of the countries between Europe and Russia. And then throw on top of that China here, infiltration, not invasion, right? We had somebody with open servers leaking technology and things of that nature to China. who cares not one bit about intellectual property, mind you. And on top of that, Confucius Institutes abound in all of our higher learning institutions, universities, and colleges and the like. And of course, we just had here in the last week a Harvard professor taking bribes, a couple 100,000 here, up to $1 million, whatever it was, and some secret accounts just to do a little work on the side, if you will, for China, right? And then, of course, if you really want to be look at it through a hypocritical lens, it's as if to say the U.S. is somehow the angel in all this, that we in our clowns in America do not go around trying to subvert elections and install puppets left and right. In any case, looking at the shorter term problem, Russia has been engaged in a campaign of threatening behavior, most dramatically along Ukraine's eastern border. Additionally, recent combat training events in Belarus serve to intimidate Ukraine from the north. However, there are signs that, though menacing to be sure, Putin's immediate threat may be waning. In a Christmas Day article, Reuters commented on an Interfax report that Moscow is redeploying more than 10,000 of its troops from Ukraine's border to permanent bases. Yet between 70 and 90,000 Kremlin-deployed infantry and motorized armor remain on Ukraine's doorstep. Putin's posturing and bullying actions may be the cause du jour, but the adversary that requires Resident Biden's complete and, as much as possible, undivided attention is China. And again, thinking here recently what some yin-yang named Kamala Harris decided to throw out there as if she's credible and to be taken seriously, is we're going to take Russia out of SWIFT. That's a pretty drastic measure. For those who don't know, SWIFT is what is used for all the various banksters net to communicate and transact. And by removing Russia from that, supposedly that would cause great harm to them. But in reality, what's it really going to do? It's going to tighten the bonds between Russia and China. Because guess what? They have an alternative to SWIFT. The Chinese military's bellicose operations against Taiwan are the most obvious defense issue the U.S. has with the People's Republic of China. But what makes Beijing the most critical long-term focus of America's all of government security is the ubiquity of the Chinese Communist Party and its insinuation into the fabric of U.S. society, military preparedness, and culture. Pete Sweeney, writing for Reuters, reports that typical of the PRC's impact on America's economy is the recently revealed secret deal by Apple's chief executive officer, Tim Cook. Cook agreed to invest $275 billion in China over 5 years in exchange for relaxing pressure on its business. This type of corporate extortion is not uncommon. Coerced technology transfer in exchange for market access is a point of major diplomatic friction between China and its trade partners, writes Sweeney. The problem is more pervasive than information technology systems like Apple. Major aerospace and defense companies are part of the PRC's metastasis into the U.S. economy. Sweeney reveals that everyone from Microsoft to Boeing has built research and development centers in the PRC or directly handed over intellectual property. The Apple deal resulted from Beijing officials targeting iPhone for various lapses. Cracking down on one of the world's top 10 largest companies could have put the computer giant supply chain in jeopardy, seriously curtailing Apple's global profitability. And China is the single most imperiling existential national security threat to the United States' viability as a world power and global influence for democratic values. In upcoming articles, Liberty Nation will examine more deeply the CCP's recent and anticipated worldwide alarming activities and what the Biden administration could do to counter Beijing's hegemonic aspirations. So, interesting piece out of Liberty Nation here. Dave Peterson kind of takes a crack at it. Keep an eye out for later installments of this. Maybe we'll bring that back up here next week if there's more written about that. But aside from that, you think of China and, of course, the One Belt, One Road initiative, the predator capitalism, if you will, The way that works is you make these hefty loans and that to poor countries, fully knowing that they're not ever going to be able to repay them. Promise them all sorts of infrastructure and things of that nature, and then find out when they can't repay their loans. Oh, well, here in the fine print of the contract, it says, well, we just get to run it for you. We're going to take your airports, we're going to take your ports, critical infrastructure, things of that nature. And it's very predator like. Not to say that the U.S. is any better with the stuff that we do in our campaigns in the Middle East, but nonetheless. Anyway, aside from that, flashing over to the Middle East, Lebanon energy minister says gas deal with Egypt will raise electricity supply. For those that follow me in the morning, know that I spend a good deal of time covering financials, energy, things of that nature, and what has been playing out all across Europe. UK and the like. Here lately, natural gas has been through the roof, and as of now, we have umpteen tankers on the water heading to Europe with liquid natural gas from the United States, and will help to ease some of those woes. But energy is certainly in shortage around the world these days, and of course, Lebanon right there with us. Says Lebanon's energy minister Walid Fayyad said his country's gas agreement with Egypt will raise the electricity supply to between 8 and 12 hours a day at a significantly lower cost. Now, I don't know if that reads as they get electricity for 8 to 12 hours a day if they're in darkness the other times. Not sure. Perhaps maybe you guys out in chat may know a little more about that, but doggone. Can you imagine that? Yeah, you only get 8 hours of electricity today. Hope you get your clothes washed, get all your PC stuff done, and whatever else, because you're in the dark the rest of the time. Says on Tuesday, Minister Fayyad launched 2 projects to facilitate the flow of natural gas from Egypt to improve electricity production and expand the country's tanks to increase oil reserves. Speaking to reporters at the launching ceremony, he added that Egypt's technical gas services will begin renovation work on the Arab gas pipeline inside Lebanon within days, and work should be complete in a little more than 2 months. The pipeline has been out of service in Lebanon since before Syria's 10-year conflict began in 2011. Minister Fayyad said about 650 million cubic meters of gas will be brought to Lebanon through the pipeline annually to the Deir Amar power station in the north, explaining that the amount will lead to the production of 450 megawatts of electricity, adding 3 to 4 hours of electricity supplies a day. Now, in early September, the energy and oil ministers of Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, and Syria agreed on a roadmap to supply Lebanon with electricity and gas to solve an energy crisis that has been crippling the country for months. And under the agreement, Egypt has agreed to supply Lebanon with natural gas to its power plants through Jordan and Syria. So, as always, more to the story, what's going on in the Middle East, other than some typical bombing campaigns out of Israel and volleying back and forth with Iran and everything else. It's always about control of resources, whether it be natural gas, oil, or what have you. So aside from that here this afternoon, reminder, Boris Johnson argued for population control, thinks reproduction is humanity's primary challenge. Interesting piece here out of National File yesterday. And of course, all this on the back of what is playing out now with the Omicron variant, the moronic variant. In 2007, the now Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Bojo, wrote a piece for The Telegraph titled, "Global Overpopulation is the Real Issue," in which he firmly declared that the primary challenge facing our species is the reproduction of our species itself. In October 2007, Bojo, now the Prime Minister of the UK, wrote a piece for The Telegraph titled, "Global Overpopulation is the Real Issue," detailing his concern with how the notion of global human population control has been stifled by proponents on the right and left of the political spectrum. I didn't know reproduction should have been a political thing at all. But apparently, because it is politics, many ticks, they have to invade every asset of your life. It says in the piece, Johnson insisted that the most pressing issue facing humankind was not global warming, but rather the reproduction and fertility of the human race. We are getting to the point where you simply can't discuss it, and we are thereby refusing to say anything sensible about the biggest single challenge facing the Earth. And no, whatever it may now be conventional to say, the single biggest challenge is not global warming, Johnson wrote. Remember that quote, because guess who has popped up recently in the news? None other than the little twerp known as Greta Thunberg. That is a secondary challenge. The primary challenge facing our species is the reproduction of our species itself, Johnson declared. Mind you, didn't we just find out here in recent weeks that he just had a kid? Bit of a head scratcher here for a second. Johnson seemed to take issue with the idea that the population of the planet is growing with every word that skitters beneath your eyeball, adding that you can see it as you fly over Africa at night, and you see mile after mile of fires burning red in the dark, as the scrub is removed to make way for human beings. Boris Johnson compared human population growth to the bacilli in a petri dish. The British PM described flying over Mexico City, viewing the vast checkerboard of smog-bound, low-rise dwellings stretching from one horizon to the other, noting that when you look down, you have a horrifying vision of habitations multiplying and replicating like bacilli in a petri dish. The world's population is now 6.7 billion, roughly double what it was when I was born. If I live to be in my mid-80s, then I will have trebled in my lifetime, he said. I simply cannot understand why no one discusses this impending calamity, and why no world statesmen have the guts to treat the issue with the seriousness it deserves. Mind you, I suspect perhaps that Bojo maybe wasn't quite read into the plans of Event 201 and what was to come here as of 2019 and what we still deal with here today and the effects thereof. Johnson suggests that it would be nonsensical to discuss other issues such as global warming or consumerism when we are continuing to add so relentlessly to the number of consumers, aka useless eaters. Why don't you just say it for what it is, Bojo? He went further, describing how during the 1960s and 70s his father was interested in demography and that the United Nations would hold giant conferences on population control. Of course they do. Says discussions about depopulating the human race used to be perfectly respectable. He noted that back then it was perfectly respectable to talk about saving the planet by reducing the growth in the number of human beings. But over the years, argument changed and certain words became taboo and certain concepts became forbidden. And we have reached a stage where the very discussion of overall human fertility, global motherhood, has become more or less banned, Johnson wrote. Johnson complained that we seem to have given up on the population control and blamed all sorts of explanations for the surrender, including former Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, who Johnson said gave it all a bad name, with a demented plan sterilize Indian men with the lure of a transistor radio. It is time we had a grown-up discussion about the optimum quantity of human beings in this country and on this planet, Johnson said. This is a straightforward question of population and the eventual size of the human race. Well, gee, I wonder if he's been to Georgia recently. Perhaps he already knows about the Georgia Guidestones, maybe. All the evidence shows that we can help reduce population growth and world poverty by promoting literacy and female emancipation and access to birth control. Isn't it time politicians stopped being so timid and started talking about the real number one issue? Since early in the scamdemic, Johnson has become a target of British conservatives who believe his insistence on lockdowns, face masks, and bans on basic human contact like hugging with both unhelpful and unscientific. That's kind of a weird end to the story, but nonetheless, rather than talk about it openly, you think these gangsters behind the scenes don't know exactly what they're doing? They just rebrand it. Don't talk about it in the open, obviously. No. They put together plans like COVID, coronavirus, and the media to whip things into a frenzy, and then push a jab on top of it, fully knowing what it's going to do and the effects thereof. Is exactly what's going on. And Bojo, we'll have to see you at Nuremberg. Aside from that, here on today, report: CIA tortured 311 Danish orphans for 2 decades, violating the Nuremberg Code. And talk about some more folks that need to get lined up for old Nuremberg here. Got the old clowns in America and all their affiliates around the world. According to a new documentary out of Denmark, which interviewed former victims, the Clowns in America, or Central Intelligence Agency, secretly carried out experiments on 311 orphaned children. The experiments were meant to reveal psychopathic traits and snap out the link between schizophrenia and heredity. According to the report, the children were tortured in clear violation of the Nuremberg Code of 1947 that introduced ethical restrictions for experiments on humans. Aren't we kind of going through that right now, all across the globe? Little experiment, because emergency and because health and because apparently constitutions and things of that nature get to be completely subverted because emergency and safety and BS like that. That's what they want you to believe until people wise up and say, no, that is not how this works. You do not get to subvert my human rights in favor of something that promises safety that does not. Hundreds of Danish orphans were unknowingly used in experiments backed by the CIA, according to Danish radio, reporting on a new documentary called The Search for Myself. According to the report, the experiments began in the early 1960s and spanned the course of 2 decades. They were conducted to investigate the link between heredity and environment in the development of schizophrenia. However, the children were not told what research they were involved in, not even after the experiments ended. It was also funded in part by a CIA front associated with the MK Ultra program. Now, wait a minute. Didn't they tell us after the 1960s and 70s and the church hearings and that on Capitol Hill that, all that was terminated? Just a thought. Project Monarch, renamed, rebranded, COINTELPRO from the FBI, all that stuff. Think it still exists today? Of course it does. Just rebranded and hidden a little better. Eerily, the examinations took place in a basement at the municipal hospital in Copenhagen. The director and producer of the documentary, Per Wennick, was actually a victim of the CIA and subjected to these experiments as a child. In the documentary, he recalled being placed in a chair, getting electrodes put on his arms, legs, and chest around the heart, and having to listen to loud, shrill noises when attempted to incite a psychological response. It was very uncomfortable, Wennick told Danish radio. And it's not just my story, it's the story of many children. By his own admission, he was promised something funny before being taken to the hospital. I think this is a violation of my rights as a citizen in this society. I find it so strange that some people should know more about me than I myself have been aware of. According to historian, PhD, and museum inspector at the Danish Welfare Museum, Jacob Naj Rasmussen, this was the only known experiment in Danish history that used children under state care for research, and it was funded by the CIA in violation of the Nuremberg Code. So again, folks, as we watch this crap play out across the globe here today, we know that they are violating Nuremberg Code, but do you think they care? At this point, any government, any country around the globe at this point, especially if the clowns in America were allowing this to go on even, barely after the code and that the ink was even dry on that stuff after World War II. It says, according to Danish radio, the idea to experiment on the vulnerable children came from American psychologist Zarnoff A. Mednick. who is then a professor at the University of Michigan. According to Winnick and the National Archives, the research project was co-financed by the U.S. Health Service. In the first year alone, the project was supported with what today corresponds to 4.6 million, whatever the Danish currency is, about 700 grand US. It also received funding from the Human Ecology Fund. The Human Ecology Fund was a CIA-funded operation through the Cornell University College of Human Ecology Society for the investigation of human ecology to support covert research on brainwashing. Think there might be a little brainwashing going on today? Maybe they did these experiments back then so they could figure out how to extrapolate this on a much larger scale at a later time. Now, it was also connected to research under the MK Ultra program, in which social scientists, including anthropologists, were led, mostly unwittingly, to provide input into interrogation techniques still in use today. Danish psychiatrist Finney Schulsinger dedicated his doctoral dissertation to the experiments in 1977, titling it Studies to Shed Light on the Connection Between Heredity and Environment in Psychiatry. While researching for the documentary, Per Wernick managed to locate 36 boxes at the Psychiatric Center Glostrup in Hvidovre that detailed the CIA's unscrupulous child experiments. However, when the center got word of the documentary, they began shredding the docs. And Danish radio reports that Kent Christensen, associate professor of health law at the University of Southern Denmark, pointed out that the shredding of the documents was illegal. I think it's a huge failure for the former orphanage children who are interested in the pieces of their own childhood to get a total story made about their own lives. The possibility is deprived of them if you shred the research material, Nage Rasmussen told Danish radio. Indeed, it also details the CIA's depravity and violations of the Nuremberg Code. If history is any indicator, however, no one will be held responsible for exploiting these children, and it will be swept under the rug, likely escaping any scrutiny by the Mockingbird media. Had a piece by Matt Agorist, guest writer over at Humans Are Free here today. So yeah, think of that though. How many of these little experiments do they do? Not just here stateside. Perhaps many of you have probably heard some of the studies and things in that in Canada. Now we find out about some in Denmark. How many others all around the world were little pocket exercises where they thought they could exploit various folks for their personal gain? And perhaps, as alluded to in the article, for the purposes of brainwashing, take all that data collected, analyze it, and figure out how to do that on a super massive scale for times such as now. Aside from that, back here stateside, out of Border Report, Border Patrol is dealing with migrant spikes in Texas and southwestern Arizona. Mind you, I think the bulk of what was coming by way of South America on up through Mexico seems to have been knocked back, but it seems we still have some pockets here to deal with. Apprehensions off the charts in Yuma, Arizona. El Paso sector deals with increase in migrant stash houses. Out of El Paso, says unauthorized migration is shifting towards southwestern Arizona, where local authorities recently declared a state of emergency. Migrant encounters are up to 2,404.9% during the first 2 months of the 2022 fiscal year in the Yuma sector of the Border Patrol, according to recently updated U.S. Customs and Border Protection data. Yuma agents in October and November of 2020 apprehended 1,777 foreign nationals, compared to 44,512 in the past 2 months. That doesn't include a major surge reported during the first 2 weeks of December. More than 6,000 migrants came across from Mexico between December 4th and December 9th, prompting Yuma Mayor Douglas Nichols to proclaim a local emergency. Migrants are traveling through Yuma during a time of great uncertainty about the COVID-19 virus and without provisions, adequate food, water, shelter, transportation, and medical care, read the declaration which called for federal and state resources to deal with the humanitarian crisis. Yeah, it's called buses and gas. Hop on it, go right back to where you came from. As recently as 2 weeks ago, 20 to 25 migrants were still showing up daily to Yuma seeking emergency medical care per local news reports. By the way, I do believe I caught yesterday via Paul Gosar, one of the ostracized congressmen, proposing that there shall be no migration for 10 years. Will that legislation go anywhere? Probably not. But nonetheless, that's what it's going to take to thwart this and put an end to this exploitation and trafficking of humans that our government is allowing and continues to. In the El Paso sector, migrant encounters are up 68.5% in the first 2 months of the new fiscal year. Agents in the sector are routinely coming across migrant stash houses where foreign nationals are often found in cramped quarters without having been fed and with no safeguards against contracting COVID-19. Please, spare us the COVID-19 BS on this, would you? These guys aren't checked. They don't do a damn thing with them. They send them in. In the meantime, anybody who is a U.S. national here, we're the ones getting beat down and oppressed while these people come in unabated. Spare us the COVID-19 angle on this garbage. The agency on December 8th raided 2 stash houses in Socorro and Clint, Texas, taking 31 migrants into custody. And since October 1st, El Paso sector agents have turned up 33 stash houses and apprehended 340 migrants. So bottom line, it appears that this is still going on. The great policy of the Biden admin. And of course, the ineptitude of Kamala Harris, who is supposed to be championing this via her czar position, taking a hands-off approach, won't even visit, doesn't care. They would just as soon allow this to continue and run unabated and leave it up to the states at this point to handle. So aside from that, good piece here out of DC Clothesline. 5 stories you probably missed as Mockingbird Media pushed COVID fear and divide with videos. And of course, as the Mockingbird Media is a way of driving their narrative away from what is truly important, especially when it comes to deceiving you and giving up your liberties, or worse yet, government usurping authority over your liberties. Don Villa Jr. has 5 stories that impact us that the Mockingbird Media chose to ignore because they didn't fit their agenda. And this hasn't just happened just this week. Of course, they do this quite regularly. Let's scroll down here. We get into, while the mainstream media continues to either outright propagandize the masses or make abstruse any semblance of factual reporting, the Free Thought Project says that it stays dedicated to bringing you the information they refuse to talk about. Time and again, MSM pundits have demonstrated themselves to be stenographers of the state rather than arbiters of critical journalism speaking truth to power, particularly in this day and age where examples like this are innumerable. This is why publications like ours exist. And to that point, living in such an era of deliberate deception via the corporate press as we do, there remains a plethora of vital stories the public needs to know that tends to slip through the cracks. As such, the Free Thought Project has decided to resurrect an old practice of ours. In addition to our regular reporting, we will also put forth the initiative to provide a collection of brief updates and further insight into additional news stories kept from the public eye, but very much within the public's right to know. So here are 5 additional stories you likely haven't heard from the mainstream media as they shoved Omicron down our throats 24/7. And number 1, leading off, the spying scandal you haven't heard of. Node XL. Anybody in chat hear of this? Anybody tracking? Says by now, most of us are aware of the constant illegal mass surveillance taking place on all members of the public at all times. Since the 2013 revelations of the NSA's illegal spying program by Edward Snowden, it's become common knowledge. However, new information about the extent of the surveillance state continues to come forward, despite the lack of headline coverage of it. What many may not be aware of is that it is not just the United States that has erected a global panopticon of 24/7 snoops. Our ally Israel is arguably the next runner-up in the "how much illegal crap can we get away with" contest. Enter Node XL. Node XL is a popular software package used with a multitude of different Microsoft products. It's also recently been revealed as the means by which Israel has conducted its illegal spying operations on a plethora of unsuspecting people. On a recent episode of RT's Redacted Tonight, journalist Lee Camp was joined by cybersecurity expert Sean O'Brien, who shed some light on the startling, though admittedly not necessarily surprising, disclosure. And once I get to the conclusion of this, I'll drop the link for those that wish to watch some of the clips in here, et cetera, et cetera. But O'Brien went on to reveal that the tech has been utilized in coordination with the United States to mount massive surveillance campaigns on a number of those targeted as quote-unquote dissidents, which include, but not limited to, supporters of Julian Assange, reporters within the alternative press, and other anti-establishment activists such as those who speak out against police brutality. Number 2, new JFK assassination information dismantles the official story. Oliver Stone is known for his legendary work as a writer and director in the film industry, having his name attached to such classics as Scarface and Platoon. However, some of his most important work comes from the documentaries he's produced regarding the life and death of President John F. Kennedy. Stone has never been a stranger to controversy, often speaking out against the war machine and asserting the importance of critical thinking. His latest documentary continues to follow in those footsteps. JFK Revisited, Through the Looking Glass. Oh, interesting. Through the Looking Glass. Where have we heard that term from? As the name suggests, is a powerful piece in which Stone revisits some of the most compelling and curious information regarding the death of President Kennedy, on the backdrop of newly uncovered information that purports to completely discredit the official story. With Stone going so far as to say, in the years since the Warren Report, there is so much more that we know. Conspiracy theories are now conspiracy facts. A recent report featured in Covert Action magazine, one of the oldest independent media publications that take aim at reporting clandestine affairs, sheds light on some of the bombshell information the film uncovers, directly implicating the apparatus of American intelligence agencies. Stone teams up with fellow JFK assassination researchers to show how the former president's policies posed a threat to the ruling class and military-industrial complex, exposing a web of intelligence community connections to both Lee Harvey Oswald and Oswald's killer, Jack Ruby. They also examine the icy ties to the Warren Commission beyond CIA Director Allen Dulles, the Commission's conflicts of interest, and subsequent cover-up. So another interesting piece for you guys to check out there once I drop this. Number 3, Fauci emails expose propaganda campaign conspiracy. And I think we're seeing a lot of this drop. At least I have. May not hear this necessarily through the Mockingbird media, but at least aware of this. It says by now it isn't a secret that Dr. Anthony Fauci is no stranger to controversy. In addition to the last 2 years of policy decisions proving what is either gross incompetence or willful deceit, and clearly apparent characteristic traits demonstrating him as an egotistical narcissist. Document disclosures in recent months via the FOIA have exposed his career as one fraught with nefarious practices. from the psychotic torture of innocent animals to a stunning piece from Newsweek, of all places, recently revealing further documents showing Fauci and the NIH committed several violations when conducting research to deliberately engineer a coronavirus pathogen specifically capable of causing a pandemic, research that even the morally destitute Pentagon thought was too dangerous, and even further skeletons in his closet laid bare by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Fauci's history begins to read like that of a mad scientist dreamed up in the mind of Mary Shelley. But the controversy doesn't stop there. No. Says after a year's worth of defamatory propaganda vilifying any of the countless reputable experts who dare pose a contrary opinion against lockdowns and mandates, newly released emails revealed that it was Dr. Fauci and Dr. Francis Collins of the NIH who were behind the concerted effort. And as I read this here, one of the top headlines on Zero Hedge at the moment is the fact that Dr. Malone has just been suspended off Twitter. What interesting timing. Now the report, courtesy of our colleagues at The Pulse, exemplifies how Fauci and his boss devised a conspiracy to demonize the signatories of the Great Barrington Declaration, respected epidemiologists from three of the world's most prestigious universities who proposed scamdemic management strategies alternative to lockdowns. The emails specify their desire for a quick and devastating takedown of dissenting opinions, completely stifling any hope for authentic scientific discourse in a time when it was direly needed. Upon publication of the documents, Dr. J. Bhattacharya, professor of medicine at Stanford University, and one of the three original signatories of the Declaration, stated on Twitter, "So now I know what it feels like to be the subject of a propaganda attack by my own government. Discussion and engagement would have been a better path." In reality, what was the most quick and devastating were the lockdowns themselves. It has long been public knowledge that the impact of these measures has inflicted incomprehensibly irreparable damage to our civilization. A boon for the wealthy predator class while crushing middle-class workers and plunging millions into poverty. Arguably the worst societal health catastrophe of a generation. And the progenitor of lockdown policies, Dr. Neil Ferguson, having since been exposed as being a career fraudster whose pandemic projections were determined after a review by the independent experts to have been completely unreliable in the first place. And mind you, this isn't Ferguson's first rodeo, is it? You guys on the other side of the pond can probably attest what were his calculations and predictions for various other flus and avian swine flus and things of that in the past. How well did they fare? And yet, these dipshits over there decide, hey, it's a good idea to allow this joker to go ahead and put more of this out. And they listen to him. All of this has been public knowledge, with over 400 studies to date proving the failure of compulsory COVID interventions. And yet, Fauci maintained his policy to denigrate any scientist who voiced concerns. How many countless lives would have been spared had he just listened to the experts? The science, right? Number 4, Project Veritas exposes more pedophiles at Clown News. The recent accounts exposing CNN's John Griffin were despicable enough. Last week, it was reported the producer who worked shoulder to shoulder with Chris Cuomo was charged and arrested with multiple counts of abusing several young children. Unfortunately, however, the saga continues. James O'Keefe and his team at Project Veritas published a new report last week that is even more disturbing than the last. O'Keefe released a video explaining the circumstances under which their organization received the information and the decision to go public with it. They were contacted by Janine Bonani, a case manager for victims of human trafficking and sexual assault, who came forward with the evidence after the accused confessed to her confessed to her his sick fantasies involving his 14-year-old stepdaughter. An update on the story revealed the predator to be CNN producer Rick Salibi, the producer most closely associated with CNN's Jake Tapper. According to Bonanni, Salibi was comfortable disclosing this information to her due to her past as a sex worker where they met. But due to Bonanni's newfound occupation and recognizing the immediate danger, she made the decision to play along with this fantasy through text messages in order to extract enough credible evidence to bring to authorities. Whether or not Salibi remains employed by CNN is unclear, despite an investigation in which Fairfax County Police have seized all of his electronics. O'Keefe's full interview with Bonanni can be seen below, but for discretion disturbing. And last but not least, of those you may have missed, leaving off on a good note, from dark and despicable to positive and uplifting, this final entry is less of a story of its own and more of an update to one of our recent articles. Last week, the Free Thought Project brought you the story of the unlawful arrest of former presidential candidate Adam Kokesh, who was stopped, assaulted, and unjustly thrown in a cage for driving without license plates and possessing psilocybin mushrooms. Whoops. As we elaborated in our article, the policies of the drug war and the persecution of innocent persons for victimless infractions deemed crimes is an affront to liberty. But the injustices did not stop there. Upon his incarceration, there were multiple accusations of further rights abuses by Saguache County officials. Worse still, he was not the only one subjected to cruel treatment. His dogs, which were also confiscated and sent to the local pound, were left in an outdoor kennel, forced to endure sub-freezing temperatures of the Colorado winter, suffering frostbite on their ears as a result. The dogs were thankfully, however, soon retrieved by friends of Kokesh. During this ordeal, Kokesh mounted a protest from inside the jail, peacefully and passively refusing to cooperate with the booking process. Standing on the principle that he would not confess to a crime that was not committed, he thus brought the unjust system to a standstill. Things were made even more complicated when the email address provided by the county for public thoughts and concerns began to return warnings that senders were misusing the email system and would be blocked if they continued to do so. The abrupt change of policy was more than likely a response to the flooding of emails the small county began to receive from supporters of Kokesh from across the country. And as a result, his partner Joy Lee was poised to hand deliver printed copies of the hundreds of emails directed to the judge the morning of Adam's arraignment, unsure of how long this treacherous tribulation would stretch through the holidays. However, we here at the Free Thought Project are very happy to report that on the night of Tuesday, December 21st, what could possibly be called a Christmas miracle happened. Suddenly, the tyrants of Saguache County surrendered. That evening, Adam Kokesh was freed once more, with all charges dropped. Kokesh himself provided a full update on the events surrounding his incarceration, protest, and release on the latest episode of his podcast, Adam versus the Man, linked below. So we'll break from that there. Again, I'll drop the link out there for you guys to check that out. If you guys wish to see any of the video excerpts and whatnot out of there. But yeah, leading a protest from inside, that's kind of interesting, kind of a new tactic. But perhaps if you ever find yourself in that position, maybe you'll need to do the same. Who knows? Let's see here. Also on the day here, out of American Thinker, do Democrats want to build back better, or do they want a coup? Piece out of American Thinker here, Jeffrey Ludwig asks the question, can they have it both ways? I don't know. In a recent article, the brilliant commentator David Hansen asks, what is behind recent pessimistic appraisals of democracy's future from Hillary Clinton, Adam Schiff, Brian Williams, and other elite intellectuals and media personalities? His answer to this question is that the left expects to lose power over the next 2 years. Perhaps, but on the other hand, maybe the leftist pessimistic appraisals are more of a verbal ploy to suggest they are concerned about democracy when in actuality they are participating in an attempt to enact a coup against democracy, against our beloved republic. Declining poll numbers will affect only those old-fashioned Dems who still believe in the relevance of the vote. Today, sadly and horrendously, we seem to be on a different trajectory. Through a number of pressure points, the left is trying to overwhelm and subvert constitutional checks and balances, basic ideas of fairness, historical understandings of things like voter rights and equality of opportunity, which is not and should never be equality of outcomes, law and order, the public weal in protecting against theft and bodily harm, and responsible conduct as a sign of a good citizen. Now, massive mail-in schemes, elimination of voter ID, federal control of even local elections, extended periods of time for voting, and ballot harvesting are high on the list of Dem priorities. Their priorities are clearly not about fairness, but about corrupt manipulation of our nation's voting priorities as a free society. For the first time in my lifetime, the military leadership has publicly shown partisanship toward the Dems. General Milley, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staffs, apologized after walking with President Trump following rioting in Washington, D.C., and later said he wants to look at his own white rage. Is it appropriate for the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to make comments like these? Those comments themselves are suggestive of a coup. In the so-called Build Back Better legislation, the leftist cult now in power, albeit marginally, wants to double the size of the IRS by adding 86,000 agents. The net result of this incredible increase is not to increase oversight, but to weaponize the IRS as an instrument of public intimidation. Just as conservative political organizations were targeted by the IRS during the Obama administration, the present desired expansion will allow for more harassment and fines of individuals in our new surveillance society. Does anyone really think surveillance of individuals in our society and world is just paranoia? Haven't we seen, if we message a friend on Facebook or in an email about looking for insurance, that suddenly ads for insurance starts appearing on our Facebook accounts? The surveillance society is already here. It's just a question of extent to which that expertise will be applied to monitoring our daily lives. The doubling of the IRS, I propose, is a giant step forward toward extending their surveillance state. Even certain conservative voices that oppose this expansion of the IRS fail to perceive the coup implications of this legislation. Instead, they project a cost-benefit analysis of the increased size, and in doing so, they rightly conclude that the increase in size is unwise because of the excessive cost to taxpayers in terms of dollars spent on tax professionals and time spent filling out taxes, and the burdensome additional layers of tax complexity that will be established. However, the cost-benefit objectors do not understand the more extreme implications of such an expansion. And about 2 months ago, Senator John Thune went further in his critique of this provision of the Build Back Better and pointed out that more stringent oversight by IRS would overwhelmingly impact those who earn $100,000 a year or less. He called this oppression a shakedown. But worse, this provision is an important instrument of a coup, as it would extend the police power of the federal government exponentially. The trajectory and momentum of this administration are to take over our lives with an unprecedented loss of freedom. A cautious reader of this analysis might think, why would expansion of the federal government by the Democrats necessarily be a coup? There are regular shifts in power between the two parties in the three branches of government. So, expanding or overreaching with federal authority and power should not be discerned as a democratic coup. In one sense, this is accurate, and it would explain why there is not more vigorous resistance to and denunciation of Democrats by the Republicans. As Democrats push hard for moving to ever more tyrannical extensions of federal power, the Republicans in political office will also enjoy some of that excess power over the citizens. However, since the vast expansion of federal authority began with President Woodrow Wilson and President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the federal agencies and bureaucracies attract generations of people who see their jobs as more beholden to Dems than to Republicans. Thus, being the basis of their livelihoods, our administrative state, the federal bureaucracy, remains in an entrenched bastion of Democrat support, despite changes in legislative or executive authority. Whether we call it the bureaucratic state or the deep state, common sense would dictate that its inherent allegiance is to the Dem Party, which spawned this ever-growing, ever more entrenched apparatus that has become a branch of our government. Now, the Department of Justice now alerts us to the threat of domestic terrorism that may be operating or at least burgeoning in the expression of parents at school board meetings protesting critical race theory and anti-family sexual agendas across the land. This attempt to, at the very least, stigmatize those parents who speak out is more than a nuisance and unwanted presentation. It is belligerent and harassing of parents and a denigration of the First Amendment. New laws to extend free pre-K and pre-pre-K 3 and 4-year-olds are on the table, financed by and thereby controlled by the federal government. The opportunity to advance secular humanism and cultural Marxism even more, we are already in a radical moral decline, will clearly be advanced if these quote-unquote helpful pieces of legislation are passed. The intrusions of federal power and authority in our lives are being pushed forward to a degree that can only be characterized as a coup. The Dems are no longer willing to live with a tension between big government and the rights of states and individuals. Rather, they want to enforce federal power as decisive in that tension and thereby sabotage the idea of individual responsibility as an end in itself, which understanding is the basis of a free society based on natural rights. So, interesting piece there out of American Thinker. So, basically, the Build Back Better crap that has since been thwarted by the likes of Senator Joe Manchin and perhaps put out to pasture through maybe even midterms. We'll have to see at the culmination of the winter break here whether or not that's picked back up again. But when you hear the idiots on the left cry about the fact that democracy itself will be destroyed, now they have ulterior motives. That's quite clear. These folks know that if they lose power now, they will never, ever, ever get this close again to having full control over everything. Period. They won't. The people are too awake. There is enough folks awakening to the garbage that is going on that they will never, ever get this opportunity again. Irritating, frustrating, tiring. It's relentless, and it continues to go on. Hopefully, we get more and more folks awakened to what is actually going on out there. So it is the top of the hour. I don't know if KB has since joined or not.
I'm here.
Aha, you are in the background. I can't see you when you come in. You're kind of sneaky.
It's an
That's all right.
thing.
All good. Did you have a good Christmas?
I had a very quiet one, thank you. It was
very good.
First one since the passing of my mom, and I chose to actually spend time on my own, and it was really, really enjoyable. I did a lot of good things, and had a peaceful, quiet time. And with yourself?
I would say it was pretty quiet as well. I think today is the first day I've actually been out of the house in almost a week. Yesterday we actually got some snow here. Wasn't planned, certainly, and I think we got a couple inches. Kind of made things a little messy around these parts, but yeah, we're drying back up. Looks like a lot of it's melted, and maybe we'll get a little freezing rain drizzle stuff here tonight. But yeah, we're definitely in the winter season, and just a good time to be in home in general, not out in the fray.
I spoke to my brother in the UK. They're down with this bug. And I actually said to him today that perhaps he was hanging out with too many vaccinated people.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that possibility. I mean, you think of what we'll call the purebloods, those who have not gone and taken the concoctions. And unfortunately, if these folks are not educated as to what's going on, perhaps they are. I don't know. Hanging around those who have, the implications thereof, and the shedding and everything else that goes on. We have really have no idea how long these symptoms, these I don't even know what the heck to really call them. I don't know. You talk about some women in ed who have been around other women that end up having some menstrual cycle changes, things of that nature. Who knows how long that lasts, and if there's any long-term effects of that. And they're going to continue to push this fear campaign to its full extent until finally the people break and say they've had enough. And I think we're starting to see a lot of that play out worldwide.
Absolutely. Well, it was quite interesting here in South Africa that the health department, everything here is, if you would call it federal, it's centralized government at its worst or best, or whichever way you want to describe it. But they were about to get rid of mask mandates, and then suddenly did an about face today. So just when we thought there might be one minor victory, but was dashed. I wonder how that got changed, because no one's in parliament at the moment. So it's almost as if a government's functioning without any regular authority. But it seems to be the pattern that's happening across the world. These decisions are made by unelected bureaucrats, and they're marching to the beats of the same old drum that we've been talking about for the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, and they want to keep us on this endless cycle, thinking that we'll never catch on to the pattern, right? And I don't know, KB, if you happen to catch my Monday morning show or not. I happen to go through. Okay, then you also know what happened immediately afterwards. But the showstopper that I think that will likely put this to rest is obviously what came out last week by way of the military and what they have kept under wraps for the better part of 2 years, including having trials and experiments and results in that they could analyze. The fact that big pharma either thumbed their nose at it or turned a blind eye to it, whichever way you look at it, or both, that could be the big game changer that stops all this right dead in its tracks.
It also takes the will to do it. And you mentioned General Milley in your earlier piece. But I am optimistic, to be honest. Despite being wary, I think many of us are, as we kind of crawl to the end of this year. Someone asked me what my New Year's resolution would be, and it would be never to give up the fight. And I
Never back
think,
down, never surrender.
no, I'm too stubborn, too grumpy, and too old. So we got this far, so we may as well go the whole hog, go all the way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I'd rather live on my feet than die on the knees at this point. And, we serve a greater God than these idiots will ever serve. The reason we know that they're pushing so hard as they are is because of who they serve. And, they've bought into the lie, the deception that they think they're going to be promised all these things. And it's just not so. It's an illusion. It's a mirage at the end of the day. And it leads to death and destruction. That is their ultimate destiny that they can't see because obviously their vision has been clouded. Whereas on the other hand, as we commonly refer to, we've read the back of the book. We know how the story ends. At the end of the day, the meek do inherit the earth, not these jackasses that we deal with today.
I think they behave the way that they do because they've been getting away with it forever. And it's I think they actually do laugh behind the curtains and laugh at how stupid the average person is. And it's understandable that they do so because they've been getting away with all this kind of thing with impunity, year after year, decade after decade.
Yeah, and I don't know, KB, how familiar you are with like Strauss and Howe and the fourth turning and that they describe, but about every 400 years or so, we go through this cycle, right? And history is rich with cycles. Whether you want to look at it from every 400 year, every 500 year, or perhaps even solar cycles, things of that nature, every 11 years, every 210 years, whatever it is, there's a lot of things that go in cycles. And when certain cycles start to line up, certain things happen. And, 400 years ago, back in the 1600s, we kind of had a similar period of time, right? And I just wonder how people during that time frame were able to see through the lies and deception of their age with the tools and mechanisms that they had to get done what needed to be done. Today we have the advantage of a lot of technology at our fingertips, but at the same time, the digital book burnings go on to prohibit going back in history and revealing what has been done. As fast as we're reading it, they're wanting to take it down.
That's one of the reasons why I've always gone for hard copy. There's nothing that beats that. And to want us to go out of your way, and it's normally out of the comfort of your office or your home that you actually have to get to a library that's actually got hard copy books. And it's quite interesting that if you go and look at newer editions of this, how history seems to just change. From the same authors, the same books, but they do manage to alter things on the margin year after year. And then when you take a look at the newest edition of a book to the original, it's almost like reading two different books.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, and they've been brilliant at it. You've got to give credit where credit is due.
That's usually how they get you. They make the deception and the lies and everything else look so appealing. But unless you've got a trained eye and a little bit of wisdom behind you and some discernment, the unsuspecting will never catch on.
I was a little bit despondent earlier today when a friend of mine's wife happened to reach out to me because I hadn't spoken to them for a couple of months. And she said, I've been thinking about you and want to know how you're doing and this and that. And she said to me, I know you're a bit of a conspiracy theorist, but have you taken
the famous label?
Yeah. And she said to me, have you taken the jab? Because we all have. And purely because it's a good friend of mine, and I actually do like her. She's a sweetheart, but so misinformed. And I said, why would I want to do that? You know, and she called me immediately. She said, well, you know, in case you get COVID. So I said, well, I've had it. And in fact, I had pneumonia and I survived. So why would I want to take something that's still experimental and use it to try and prevent something that I've already had and survived? It surely doesn't make sense. And you know, I said there's a thing called natural immunity. So my immune system is not compromised. I don't need to take a vaccine, and you know, here we are.
Yeah, it's good that you start off with a question, and I think that's probably where a lot of us are probably getting hung up. You know, and again, folks, you've heard me say this one, if not 100 times. It's not our job to change people. All we can do is plant a seed. But obviously, we've had a little help along the way over the last several years to deploy a little tool called the Socratic method. Ask questions, ask leading questions, get them curious, ask them why they think the way they do, and just plant those seeds. Don't expect an answer right away. Just plant the seed and walk away. And then when they come around and say, you know, you asked me a couple of weeks ago about this thing, and it kind of had me puzzled for a second and led me to think, and maybe they got on a computer and done a little research and said, I wonder what else, right?
Absolutely. The problem is that with some people is that my brother actually says this is a disease of the intellectuals. And somebody said to him, why aren't you getting the jab? And he said, well, I'm too stupid to get COVID. He said,
maybe the wrong answer to respond with, KB. I'm not sure. That might not be the best tactic.
Yeah. And he said, well, I don't watch television, so I actually don't have all of this fear that perhaps you do, but, you know, and my brother's also had it, and he got it quite hard. He was stubborn at the time. I had a whole bunch of chloroquine, and he said, no, my immune system will do well. Yes, he did struggle. I breezed through it purely because I had some of the therapeutics and have been taking all kinds of things and all types of natural concoctions that have been used for millennia. And yeah, I was over it in a short space of time. But despite the fact that he struggled through it being stubborn, the fact is he survived. And as 99% of the population do. So yeah, I think the Socratic method is the best way we can help people. You know, it was quite illuminating. I sent you that talk with that psychologist. I was quite enthralled about the way she actually tackled the problem, and it made so much sense to me. It was, you know, we spoke a couple of weeks ago about being a bit more empathetic and a bit more patient with people who were still not on the same page as ourselves. But what she said was made so much sense, that there's almost a vested interest in people not wanting to change their minds.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, and I suppose, you know, regardless of what I had back before Thanksgiving timeframe, when I was down for right around a week, I would say probably from Wednesday to Saturday was the bulk of what I went through, and then I was to the upside of that. Frankly, I guess I would probably attribute that to having a cast iron gut, because usually I can handle a lot of stuff and I like to eat hot things. So probably come Saturday when I started to regain my appetite, I was throwing down the old habanero pepper type stuff on a burger and that I ate, and of course just let it do its work. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not, but in my opinion, it probably couldn't have hurt. So part of it is people just don't know how to treat themselves. They don't know how to respond to issues that their body may have, and how to treat and for lack of a better term, repair those things through nutrition and various things that we have to our availability. And, I'm always of the belief anytime anything comes around, throwing some hot peppers at it is, hey, it worked the first time and it don't burn it out, then we'll hit it with some hotter peppers or something along those lines. But just do the studies, read the studies on that stuff, and a lot of the articles net out there. Many of the things net that ail us day in, day out, you don't have to go to a store and get NyQuil and things of that nature. There are plenty of remedies out there that have worked for hundreds and hundreds of years, handed down from generation to generation. And at the end of the day, how in the world did humanity ever survive up until 120 years ago, when we had these chemical concoctions known as pharmaceuticals?
Absolutely. I'm actually on your page as well. I'm a great chili lover. And one of the things, the first thing I do when I'm not feeling too good is actually make myself a chicken curry, and laced with as the hottest chili that I can. And you sweat it out, and more often than not, 8 out of 10 times, the next day you feel a lot better. But I'm definitely on the same page as you. I'm going to look forward to one day, hopefully in the future, God willing, I can taste some of your chili, and I'll make you some of mine.
Yeah, you might need to bring some ice cubes and some wet naps and that afterwards, just in case. But I do tend to favor it on the hot side, and it's not uncommon to have to grab a towel or something and wet underneath your eyes for when you begin sweating afterwards. But that's how I like to eat it. I don't go for the mild stuff.
Me neither. In fact, tonight, I normally fast on Wednesdays and Fridays, and I go vegan for those 2 days. Today, I had a traditional Greek bean stew, and the first thing I did was chop 4 chilies on.
Oh, sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's really lovely. The traditional food is something I really love, and I try and do it in keeping with all the old recipes. So today was a veritable feast of bean stew and chili. I think I wanted to be a cowboy all my life.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring up the diet and the fast and that too, because here come first of the month, usually my church, our congregation, that those who are able participate in what's called the Daniel fast. It's just kind of reset and recalibrate your systems and that, restrict your diet of whatever it is you choose to leave out. In my case, typically I'll leave out any sort of meats and things of that nature, pretty much go vegetarian, but I still have my coffee, things of that nature. But come first of the month here, I'll be hitting that. And in conjunction with that, I'll be happy to report to you guys the goings on of my liver cleanse as well. I'm going to go through a second round of that to do a little detox in conjunction with. So if I come across perhaps maybe a little bit irritable in the next week or so here, perhaps maybe that is why.
I've just shared something on the screen about that 72-hour fast, and it really regenerates your
that's a hard fast, mind you.
Yeah,
that's a hard, just like water fast. No eating, no nothing.
It's one of those things that you do maybe once a year. So it's a nice way to kickstart the year. Naturally, not on the first, but we perhaps should start on the second. So
it's we're allowed a little leeway in that, but so long as you get your 10 days in, if you think biblically as to what Daniel went through in the times that he rejected all the gourmet stuff when the king was trying to get him to bend the knee, that's kind of the premise behind it, albeit perhaps maybe a little bit modernized. some people can handle going, rah, rah, full song on the deal. And other people say, well, I'm just going to treat it like Catholics treat Lent and just cut out watching TV or whatever it is, and deal with it that way.
It's a lot more strict for the Orthodox. If you actually had to follow the Greek Orthodox calendar, you would in essence be vegan for half the year. So, for example, we fast 40 days for Easter, and we are not allowed anything from an animal. So that means butter, milk, cheese. So it's a really hard fast, and you're supposed to do that over the Christmas period for 50 days.
Yeah.
Which I don't do. So, I choose to do the 40 days for Easter. I think it's in line with Christ having gone into the wilderness for 40 days and fasting. And so I do that, and I do it successfully every single year. The thing I miss the most are normally eggs and butter. So everything else I get by with. But nonetheless, I think it's important because fasting and prayer.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. In conjunction with the Daniel fast, staying in the word, prayers, supplications, requests, all that stuff is paramount. Kind of a reconnection. It's like I said, it's meant to kind of recalibrate you, reset your systems and that, and start off the year right. We get so busy throughout the year and all sorts of crap and garbage comes up that sometimes we lose our focus. All those things come to play, and it just within those 10 days, just kind of recalibrate everything, refocus your time, your energy, get reconnected as you should. Make sure you're staying in God's will at the end of the day, rather than going off on your own tangents and not testing the spirits, things of that nature. All of that comes to play.
Definitely. The only thing I really struggle with is the odd bourbon, which I really enjoy. But notwithstanding that, I think it's important for everybody to do that. It's cleansing for the soul and for the body.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, once you come out of that 10 days, I'm ready to either have about a 10-ounce ribeye or a good sized hamburger or something immediately after. I'm right there with the Hebrews, man. When they came out of Egypt and all they had was manna, and they complained about not having water, they complained about not having meat and how great it was, back when we were enslaved under Egypt and the pharaohs. Well, God finally says, all right, I'm going to teach you guys a lesson here. I'm going to give you so much stinking meat, you guys are going to puke. And of course, what did he do? He rained quail down left and right, and they ate till they literally puked, and says, there, I told you so. And how quickly they forgot, because of their stiff-neckedness, their pride, that God was the one who brought them up out of Egypt and wandered the wilderness till finally, obviously, they inherited the promised land after Moses, et cetera, et cetera. But nonetheless, it's just a good time, like I said, to recalibrate and get yourself right again. We need all the strength we can get, not of our own accord, obviously. We have to remember, especially in this time that we're in, that it is very much a spiritual warfare at play. Not just physical, not just emotional, not just psychological, the psyops and the crap and that they want to try and throw over us. We just got done talking about MK Ultra here today, and the crap that they put the Danish kids through here, 311 kids. I personally believe they did all that back then to try and engage and figure out how they could possibly do that for a population in mass for a time such as now. And I think largely they've done a fairly commendable job through the TV. Absolutely.
Again, just looking around anecdotal evidence, people around me, sometimes I'm so exasperated, I just shake my head. And I've chosen the path of less resistance with people, because by attacking them directly, they automatically become defensive and don't listen to anything. So, as you mentioned earlier, the Socratic method is the best. In fact, Alexander the Great himself was taught by Socrates, and that Socratic method is actually brilliant in getting people to actually at least start to think for themselves. So, yeah, don't fight with your neighbor right now, especially over this time. I think it's time that we actually regroup and regenerate ourselves, because I think next year the fight's going to be hard.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's 2022. If you thought 2020 and 2021 were bad, I don't want to go out there and be all doom and gloom about 2022, because I think, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if we live or die through this, we win, right? We're going to have to endure for a little while. For those who read the Bible or are on God's side, obviously this life is not without tribulation, and we're going to have some oppression and things of that nature. But we're made to endure, and we will. And the thing that I look forward to in 2022, hopefully, is being able to reach more and more people who finally have come into the light. Ephesians 5 talks about this. He says, even you were once in darkness, but I have called you into the light. Be not partakers of the darkness, but rather reprove and rebuke them. And so I think that's what we're likely going to see a lot of throughout 2022. And I'm hopeful, I'm grateful, and I have to see how things fare for next year.
I'm cautiously optimistic as well. I think, as in the book of Esther, it says that she was born for a time such as this, and I guess that so will we.
Yeah.
We're here for a reason. Exactly not sure what it is. I'm not anyway. But I know it's not to do bad. So if we can help people along, save one life, get one person over the threshold, get one person to think for themselves, I think then it's a job well done.
Yeah. Ultimately, that's the goal. And whether or not this is just part of a cycle and that will go through and we'll come out the other side, great. I do see, I'll leave this open and ask you the question. What things are you looking forward to in 2022, and what sort of, dare I say, goals, I guess, are you throwing out there?
I think there's a few things. On a personal level, I like to survive it and be able to look after the people closest to me and beyond that. Secondly, from a political perspective, I think we are going to be seeing the things that we've been wanting to see for the past 5 years. I do believe that we're reaching, I'm going to use a terrible analogy, but I think the pimple will pop. And I do think that we're going to see arrests, and I do think that we're going to see people that have been misusing the public trust, abusing people, causing death and destruction, the likes of the Clintons, etc. I do think that we will definitely see some kind of beginnings of justice. I don't think we're going to see all the answers, but if you just have a look at things like Durham, I don't know what your thoughts are, but on the devolution papers, they make a lot of sense to me. And then there's been another chap who, I forget his name right now, he's written some decent pieces, and they're all fitting in. I think the jigsaw puzzle is starting to take shape. The picture's emerging. The ifs, buts, and whens are, well, not a time of our choosing. But going back to the overall theme, it's definitely a spiritual war. And I don't know if you follow Archbishop Vigano at all.
I've seen his writings here as of late. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's not actually calling for Catholics to gather. He's talking about Christians gathering. It's almost like a uniting of the clans. And yeah, I can see that happening. I can see Christians standing up and fighting. And if anyone goes back in history and just has a look at how many Christians were killed by the Vatican, how many Christians were killed by communism, by Lenin, by Stalin, by the fascists. You know, there has been a relentless war against Christianity for not only the last 150 years, but so far beyond that, almost, I think, to the time of the garden. You know, because we know about that spiritual war. So I think these things are soon to be revealed to many people, and people will have to take sides. And, you know, I don't think it's merely a survival thing, because as my late mom used to say, if you're a real Christian, you shouldn't fear death. And she was quite right. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah. So just as you say, I'm not afraid of dying. And yeah, I'm not planning on dying on my knees. So I think we're in for a good fight. And my wishes and aspirations for next year are that many people perhaps get away from this, hopefully just having a mild lesson learned. And hopefully we'll be seeing it. I don't know why I keep on thinking this, but I think it's in more or less the timing will be around about Easter. And I've got no basis for the reason I say that, other than some kind of instinctive feel that it would be, poetic justice, I guess.
Well, regardless of how you feel, for those that have followed devolution and read through the 15 parts to date, whether or not that is or is not taking place really is of no matter. If it is, great, but I see it not really being made manifest without some level of divine intervention, period. Because what we're dealing with behind the scenes is not of a humankind making. And, you know, they want to try and push us to this precipice, right? And I think, you know, many folks, we could sit and debate this all day long, whether or not we consider ourselves to be in the end times or not. Well, hell, even the disciples after Christ's death, burial, resurrection thought that they were in the end times. Well, what will the signs be, you know, in Matthew 24? And of course, all throughout that time frame over the last 2,000 years, we've had a number of people say, "Oh, this is it, this is it, this is it." Now, you know, the sky is falling type scenario, and they want to push us to this. But for a discerning eye, you can clearly see where they've made mistakes. And there's a number of things that I believe that other folks may not see. In that the church, one, has to be united, and they're not. In the book of Revelation, Christ comes back for his bride. Christ is the groom. The church, being the bridegroom, has to be made whole. We're not there. If they think that they're going to push for that sort of end time stuff, then they skipped a step and they missed it. And, you know, that's just one of a number of things, Net, that I can see. But, you know, they want to try and advance a timeline. They want to try and test God, play gods themselves, thinking themselves to be omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, all the things, with all the tools of mankind made, thinking that they can play God, but they are not. They've erred greatly in their pride. And, you know, we're seeing all that play out. And so I think, yes, we're going to see some judgments take place. Yes, it's going to be a little bit painful to watch. Yes, this COVID business is probably going to be a bit more harsh than we would like to see. But as with any war, there is some level of attrition along with it.
Definitely. Yeah, I think there will definitely be more casualties. I was actually rewatching a 3-part series of Stu Peters, which was quite good and informative about Dr. Martin. And if I'm correct, I think Dr. Martin is both a doctor and a lawyer. And he's one of the ones that's actually gone and followed the money trails. He's gone and had
patents,
etc. Yeah, and I mean it's pretty damning. And I rewatched the whole lot. In fact, last night, the 3 parts, and I would encourage the listeners out there to. I'll actually try and just put up the links, and it might be worthwhile. People having a look at.
Would you agree, though, and listening to him, because I did catch part of one, not the full, but perhaps maybe one potential blind spot that he has is the potential for this COG playing out in the background?
Yes. Yeah. I look, the man's not infallible, and I don't hang on every single word he says. And I think it's well worth going out there and doing your own research, as we've been taught. But I think I think what he's done is actually lay out in quite an orderly fashion some of the crimes that have been committed by these people, in particular Fauci, etc. And what he says makes a lot of sense. Now, he appears to have all the proof, and that obviously we need to go and verify for ourselves. And yeah, but I think his overall perspective of it is quite lucid. So I mean, the man's not, some kind of raving lunatic, and he has got, he's got a track record of actually being, out there and searching for the truth in an orderly fashion. So I think it seems to me quite apparent. One of the takeaways that for me was quite important was when he was talking about the various members of Congress, etc. He seems to apparently he's taken this to various auditors general. He's taken it to Justice Department, shown them the proof, and he says the only one that really he has any faith in at all is Senator Ron Johnson. So, and even then he was saying, let's see what happens there. But to be supportive of Senator Johnson, he's the one that's also had all those hearings on the vaccine injuries.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going to go next and say, as far as I know, he is the only one that to date has had any folks left, right, center, what have you, have debilitating effects, participated in studies, various doctors, you name it, all up on the Hill. I actually broadcast that when they had that live. You guys can find that actually over on my backup channels over on Rumble and all that good stuff as well, if you missed it. Matter of fact, I think the day of, I actually pulled up Open Secrets just to see, what sort of contributions he has taken from Big Pharma. And it was literally like 15th or 20th on the list. He definitely has some higher dollar donors well ahead of them. And I think for maybe this last campaign cycle, he may have taken like $5,000 as a whole, something like that. So it's not to say that not a single one of these folks has some level of financial ties, right? And I know people are coming out here lately and saying, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene hasn't come out and said anything against, taking dollars from Big Pharma as well. She looks to be good, but she hasn't disavowed or anything along those lines. Well, I hate to tell you, folks, every single one of us is invested in them as well. Anybody who's working to date who has a 401k, things along those lines, guess what? You're invested in them too.
That's why I think the parallel economy that we mentioned a couple of months ago is important. And I think that's also picking up momentum. I think people are starting to vote with their dollars. and we must carry on doing that. Support your local mom and pop shop.
Yep.
It's important that they're in business, because they're the ones that actually know you. They're the ones that are actually going to be there for you when the proverbial pawpaw hits the fan. And it's not going to be the big institutions. I boycott Coke. Will not have any Coke products at all. Anything to do with all the big chains in South Africa. I actually changed my medical aid, which is what we call it here, from a company that's affiliated to. I've been with them for 15 years, and I changed purely because they're forcing the vax mandate, and again. I was unaware, but recently became aware that they're part of the World Economic Forum's favorite. Yeah, exactly. And there's more than a few of those. So we have to learn to start supporting like-minded individuals. And I think that network is starting to actually grow. For the first time, I'm a little bit confident in that. I noticed and was talking about trying to do something along these lines almost at the beginning of this year. And it's only really starting to take traction here, which leads into one of the other things that we're doing here. There's a number of us looking to actually move to areas that we can sustain ourselves. And there's quite, I think one of the biggest prepper communities in the world happens to be in South Africa. So
interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, even the schooling system, we're putting together documents to actually include in schooling, teaching people how to grow their own food. Woodwork.
Should be part of schooling.
Yeah, metalwork, doing practical things. So, it's all very good to have. I always believe that your emphasis should be on mathematics and history, but that's where I've got a natural bias. So, but it's so important. Teach a child how to, plant a tree. It's a lot better and a lot more useful than some of the garbage that we actually teach kids.
So in the remaining time that we have here, knowing, as much as I follow financials, there's a piece that I covered yesterday, and I can't remember if it was Mises Institute or Ron Paul Institute. I forget which that I covered. But in essence, what it was talking about is the crack up boom. All right. So what is a crack up boom, you ask? Well, it's when the people finally wake up and realize that the confidence in our mechanisms for our purchasing things, what we commonly refer to as money, that we think has value and is a store of value, people wake up and realize that, oh crap, it's the Federal Reserve that has inflated this away and printed so many dollars into circulation that we now have a little problem with, one, retaining value, and number two, having any purchasing power left. And so when people finally hit that precipice, if you will, it's known as a crack up boom. So I guess my question to you, KB, is what do you think the ETA is to when we see something like the crack up boom take place? When do the masses finally wake up in conjunction with all the other stuff going on behind the scenes? People realize, hey, I can't make ends meet now because my wages aren't keeping pace with how fast the dollar is being eroded away.
I think the answer to that is sooner than later. So I'm not giving it more than 6 months, purely because, well, look, if I look at it, I guess the answer is multifaceted in that perhaps in Africa, that crack-up boom will happen sooner than later. And maybe they'll be able to carry on the charade in the US for a bit longer. But,
so you think it's going to happen in emerging market countries faster than it'll happen here through the Federal Reserve?
Yes. I think that's going to be the last bastion. That'll be the last pillar standing between the the Federal Reserve and Europe.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
What was quite interesting is a friend of mine's father passed away. He's French and went back to Paris. And I didn't ever have the discussion with him about jabs or COVID or any of the stuff. And he happened to come and have a cup of coffee with me. And he actually said something quite telling. He said, I'm convinced they killed my father. And if you have a look at what's going on in France, purely because of the socialist system that's so well entrenched there, the government is making so much money in actually the taxes by forcing people to get rid of their property. So it's almost exactly what Charles Schwab said, you'll have nothing and yet you'll be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And his inheritance has effectively been taken away due to death duties. So the government's actually coining it in France. And I think they'll be able to carry on that kind of lunacy a bit longer than any kind of emerging market will.
But here's a little thing that the government won't tell you, nor will you hear this out of Klaus Schwab and all these jokers behind the scenes, right? See, here's this little problem of ownership, right? Biblically speaking, we, the seeds behind Abraham, knowing that the populations would be numbered as the sands of the sea after Abraham, meaning us, we are living, breathing souls. We are the ones that are capable of owning things. Granted, it's owning in the sense in the physical realm. Yes, we can own it. Basically, we have dominion over it, but God owns all, yes. But the problem is the government can't own anything. Why can't it? It's a dead entity. It is not a living, breathing soul. Therefore, something that is dead cannot own. Correct. They'll never tell you that, but they want to snow you over to that deception.
Well, they've been owning it via taxes. So, and I think one of the things that we've got to actually contemplate is actually in the most orderly way forward, resist actually paying taxes.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
starve the beast.
Is starve the beast, and that's certainly one of the ways. And that's why I say it's important to be able to mobilize people to actually just think and say, why should we be supporting a company like Coca-Cola? Perhaps I'm a little bit too white to support them.
Or who seeks to flat out kill you.
Yeah, like the pharmaceutical companies. So, and I do think that if you think about it, just take a big step back and have a look at it from a 40,000 foot view, and who are the people that have got the money? It's actually the conservatives. So we've got a lot more strength and power than we give ourselves credit for. You're going to have the local Antifa mob sitting back waiting for their government handouts on a monthly basis. Whereas the conservatives are the ones that are breaking their backs to make ends meet, looking to pay for their ranch or the taxes. I think one of the best things that President Trump did was the inheritance tax. I think that, he didn't get enough credit for that. I thought that was a brilliant move. I don't know, and I'm unaware of whether the Biden regime, and I do call them a regime, has been able to unwind that in any form. But
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and if one has a look at the UK, for example, they have the most ridiculous form of ownership, and I use inverted air quotes there, because you're effectively buying a property in the UK in many, many parts, particularly of London, that's actually on a 99-year lease. So you actually never own that property.
Yeah.
So
same is true here.
Yeah, it's the freehold concept is so much better entrenched in little South Africa than it is perhaps in the US, which I don't know enough about it, but and certainly in the UK, because effectively who owns all the land in the UK? Well, the Crown.
Yep.
So we still live in a feudal system, whether people believe it or not.
Very much so. And unless and until you break free from it and see everything for what it is, and in effect reverse engineer all the crap that has taken place over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years to get us to this point, people really have no idea that today we still live in Roman civil law. I mean, all you have to do is look at the language they use in the court systems to understand that. They don't want you to understand what's going on.
No.
Why do you think they talk in Latin? And, and even back in the times of Woodrow Wilson, I believe it was Edward Mandelhouse, who was one of his advisors, a Rothschild guy in and out, says, hey, even if the people were to figure out what we have pledged the people to, meaning through the use of their birth certificates, et cetera, it's a bond that they will never, ever be able to figure out that we've monetized it in effect. And basically you become chattel to them. So even if they were able to figure it out, we will have plausible deniability. This was back in the 30s.
Breaking, I think it would be a great thing if you did a show specifically on that to try and more people through that.
I've been considering it, yeah. Just actually going through what happened at that particular time. I've kind of hinted around it in the past. Obviously, I've talked a lot about mortgages and mortgage-backed securities and the pass-throughs and remix, things of that nature, and how we technically don't have loans that we pay back to banks because they never own it. In effect, it's actually going right back to the Federal Reserve for the credit that they borrow and give you back, and the double bookkeeping and all that good stuff that goes on behind the scenes. The more people wake up to that, the more inquisitive they become and say, well, gee, if this is happening, what about this and this? And all right, now what the hell do I do about it? And how do I get out of it? And just like you mentioned, with the UK, the 99-year lease, the same is true here. Nobody technically owns their land unless and until you get out of the system and you rely upon various constitutions that were brought into the Union, like, for example, the Wisconsin Constitution of 1848, as written. One of the amendments states in there that all lands are declared to be alloidial. Mm-hmm. And of course, if you understand what alloidial lands are, how to do a declaration of that sort of thing, how that portends to land patents as the West was settled. After the 13 original colonies came to be, the states were settled, the lands were settled, et cetera, et cetera. Then and only then can you really understand how to circumvent the system.
I recall us having an offline conversation months ago.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah. And what was quite fascinating for me is because you pointed out a couple of things that I didn't know. And I really do think it would be a worthwhile exercise of maybe doing a series of shows, kind of taking people by the hand and walking them through this, because I think therein lies so much potential for people to actually open their eyes for something that's not political, and I think you bring people closer to the light because you're empowering people with knowledge, and no pressure.
No, we'll get there. I'll probably wait till after the first of the year, just because the holidays and that. Get a few more people engaged, and hopefully people aren't falling over and things of that nature, still getting sick and all that. But a lot of this stuff is actually documented. I got another group of folks now that I deal with behind the scenes here who have got a ton of this stuff. A lot of this stuff is over on some various other platforms and channels, things of that nature. So it's just a matter of specterizing it, I guess, and putting it into a show, and then say, look, hey, if you want to learn more about this, here's where you go.
It's true. It is specterizing because he's actually given hello sunny days. He gives it a lot of thought, and he's actually gone through that. And I was fascinated by the fact that you can actually, if you've got the right tools available, go and actually track down your birth certificate and see where it sits.
So, absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you know the ins and outs of the financials and how to tool around on a Bloomberg terminal, for those that have those and got an extra about 35 grand a year laying around that they can lease one. You can trace just about anything financially you want.
So, that in itself is helping people over the threshold, and it takes them, and again, that opens up the mind to so many things, and the questions that come from it. So, if there's anything I can do to assist in that venture, I'm more than willing.
Sure. In other words, stay tuned, folks. More to come in the new year. We're not going anywhere. We're going to keep trudging on.
Yeah. I'm using the next couple of days just to beat out all the dents in my armor, and
of course,
yeah, and get some rest, and I'll be back in the fight on Monday.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Hey, breaking news that they reached a verdict in the Ghislaine Maxwell sex trafficking trial.
Oh, that was quick. I just saw earlier today, I think, I forget what outlet I was reading this out of, that they were trying to prevent a mistrial because of the surge in Omicron variant cases.
Right.
That's being scapegoated for everything now.
Don't you get the feeling that this is going to be some kind of organized verdict where there'll be a couple of things that you'll be found guilty of just to keep the main names out of the press?
Well, yes and no. And I think the reason I say that is because what people tend to forget is that Virginia Giuffre is supposed to have another trial coming up against Ghislaine here in another couple weeks as well. Now, that one's in a different district and different charges, all sorts of stuff in that regard. But perhaps that one may be the one that kind of delivers the TKO, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And, even if you read part 15 of Devolution, they didn't expect that the people would be able to see the stuff come out of the trial that we have, albeit it was shortened. They had expected to have some 40-some witnesses, and basically they only brought 8, something along those lines. So there could have been a lot more. I don't know. Lay it on us, Sonny. What do you got?
Just stuff. my video clips and Twitter.
Oh, I thought you had the actual article. It says what they came back with.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was still looking at stuff. No.
It
just says jury to announce verdict in Ghislaine Maxwell. So I've been looking for it, but that's all I'm seeing. It's like,
so they haven't officially announced it. They just put out that, hey, yeah, they're reconvening and gonna hand it
imminent.
Back.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If I do one thing while I'm on air, because you
left us hanging.
I know some other platforms, the chat gets upset with you if you don't pay attention to them, and I understand it, but it's like if I pay attention to them, totally zoned out on what anybody is saying. So that was happening while I was looking at Twitter, going, because some of these are like 16 minutes ago, 12 minutes ago.
Right.
I checked Inner City Press because I think he's there actually, but his last post is 7 hours ago. So
yeah,
I was expecting a drum roll.
Yeah, imminent. I thought we were going to have results. Sunny to announce here in 2 minutes after we turn it over at the top of the hour. Now that we're past.
Brilliant. Yeah. So we're going to leave you. Well, I'm going to leave you, and I'm going to wish you a wonderful new year. Lots of blessings. I hope you have a peaceful one. And I hope you actually get to break the news, Sunny.
Well, I am actually on New Year's Eve night, but I'm not on till midnight. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm not quite sure. I have an idea of what I'm going to do, but I
It's
always
gonna
kind
be
of wing it.
crazy.
Yeah,
Well, appreciate
definitely.
it, KB, for coming in. Happy New Year to you as well. I'll see you back next Wednesday. Get well rested, and we'll give it a go then.
Yeah. Sharpen up the sword, punch
Absolutely.
out the dents, and have a blessed and peaceful one.
Take care.
You too.
You too. Take
Hey,
care.
Breaking, since I'm the last
Yes.
show, are you going to be here or do you think Soko? Because last time it was Soko,
Uh,
right?
we'll just shut her down at the top of the hour if that's all
Okay.
you want to do,
Yep.
or if you want to go for 6 more hours and keep on trucking. That's
Nope.
entirely up to you.
Top of the hour is good. Thanks.
All right. Sounds good.
And just before I leave, Breaking, please, if you do happen to have a chat to Soko, send her lots of love and best wishes.
Will do. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Take care.
Take care. Happy New Year, too. I won't see you till the next New Year. So, all right. Grabbing the share, folks. Interesting. Okay. I got to shut something down quick. Whoops. That made my screen blink. It didn't like that. All right. I'm gonna grab this. Okay, so I've been pulling things on Twitter today, just different stuff like I usually do. It's like other people's opinions and, you know, anyway, so yep, a jury has reached a verdict in Ghislaine Maxwell sex trafficking trial. So there's that. I'll try to keep an eye on it and we'll see what happens. And I got this just in my bookmarks, so we'll see. Let's see, Simone Gold put out, wow, an AFLDS physician now directs the nation's leading response to COVID as Florida Surgeon General. And he just exposed the Biden administration for actively restricting access to life-saving treatment. This is a damning revelation of corruption and malfeasance. And this is, she's got a clip from Fox News. Florida Surgeon General says Biden admin actively preventing mononuclear antibody treatments. I don't know why my mouth is not working today. Okay. It's always fun. Let's see. Mike Eden, left-hand man, put out just a reminder that the unjabbed are being alienated from lots of areas of society, not because they're at risk or a danger to the jab, but simply because they're exposing the scam. I think I feel similar. And I thought this was funny out of Tom McDonald, made me laugh. He says, last night I was playing VR golf online and the guy was playing was like, hey, you listen to Tom McDonald? And I was like, I am Tom McDonald. Not sure if he believed me. I thought that was pretty funny. I'm sure the guy was going, I don't know if I believe you. And I'm still a little shy about playing clips, but I love Savvy. She's called This is Savvy. She's on YouTube. I think she does podcasts now more than she does YouTube. She's probably must be still on TikTok. Maybe I'll come back to that. Let's see. The Highwire put out 31,858 healthcare workers at nursing homes, hospitals, and other health providers have been terminated, furloughed, or forced to resign because they would not comply with the mandate, according to New York health data. 31,000. Wow. So I've seen a couple posts where they're like rehiring people or they're giving these big bonuses to people that have stayed, but that can only work so long. When you're dead off your feet and you're working double shifts like that, I mean, come on, these people are going to get tired. And plus they're around people, that took those, shots. So interesting. Well, I have to keep an eye on that. And I don't know, let's see, they got the number out of, well, this is Fox News, but this is according to New York health data. Okay. All right. Biden needs to bring his, Laverne Spicer says, Biden needs to bring his scrawny lion butt back from vacation and end those mandates now before 2022 begins. It's all over Twitter today that pictures of him and Doc Jill on the beach walking their dog or something. He's got a mask on and she doesn't or something. Yeah, and there's nobody around him. This Mike put out a lot of people randomly dying. Weird. Yeah, it is weird. I think people know, a lot of people know what's going on. No thank you, is the only vaccine exemption we should have to submit. I agree with that a bit. I'm finding myself being really irritated that they're turning down so many exemptions, as well as other people, I'm sure. But not only that, but that why should we have to give an exemption? Why can't we just say no? I mean, why do I have to explain my relationship with God to anybody else? So yeah, that's how I feel about it. Mr. Potato Head, truth. We kill Epstein, put his madam on trial, have a few of the teen call girls testify against her, but never ask them who the clients were. Strategy? Kind of seems like it. Colin Pruitt put this out. He tweeted the Council of DC because they said, geez, at Newsmax, you seem to be taking this whole DC National Guard and police wrecked your little coup thing kind of hard, aren't you? So then Colin answers, a man was killed at the Anacostia. I bet I just butchered that. Anacostia metro station this morning, but DC's council is spending their time responding to my article about crime rather than actual crime. Yeah. I like this. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know a whole lot of these people who I follow. I just enjoy what the info they share or their statements. I guess he's an attorney, podcaster, social commentator, co-host of Bob and Eric's Save America. Anyway, he says it's not normal for healthy people with no symptoms to constantly test themselves to see if they're sick. They used to lock people up in asylums for that. It's true. Didn't that have a name? Wasn't that a disease in itself? Oh my goodness. Oh gosh, we live in some weird times. Jordan Schachtel put out rumors spreading on social media and local papers that the Aussie PM who oversaw the creation of COVID police state in his nation is in Aspen, Colorado on vacation. Gee, isn't that wonderful? Do as we say, not as we do, I guess. So this martyr maid kind of went on with that subject that I had just kind of laughed about. Social Munchausen syndrome by proxy, MSBP, refers to a situation when a parent or caregiver invents or induces an illness in a person under care. They do it for attention and sympathy, and then parentheses, so brave taking care of a sick child to maintain their charges dependency on them. Turns out 98% of MSBP abusers are women for some obvious reasons, some probably hidden, obvious, more female caregivers, mothers more often home with kids, etc. Hidden, to explain a number like 98%, it's necessary to consider differences in constitution situation between genders. 100 years ago, political and economic decisions were almost entirely in the hands of men, and both realms exhibited the excesses of the gender: insensitivity to suffering, competitiveness, intolerance of failure. What have been the real effects of bringing women into the process? Most men don't start wars, but 98% of wars are started by men. Most women don't poison their kids for attention, sympathy, and dependency, but 98% of Munchausen syndrome by proxy abusers are women. The first fact certainly has socio-political consequences. Does the second? Is it possible that just as the mental and emotional tendencies of males, tendency towards direct methods, obsession, and with physical courage and sensitivity to suffering, etc., were reflected in a violent politics. The introduction of women brings its own pathological excesses. The politics of 1930s Germany resembled an abusive father, but our politics resembles an abusive mother. Moral shaming, emotional manipulation, playing one off of the other, make them sick so you can care for them after everything I've done for you, keeping them dependent. I thought that was thought-provoking. Excuse me. Let's see, Critical Thinking 101. Michael Sanger, CDC Director Walensky, on the reduction of quarantine. It really had a lot to do with what we thought people would be able to tolerate. This says it all. As much tyranny as the people will tolerate, this ends when we demand they end it unconditionally. So this clip is CDC shortens COVID isolation period just as US cases hit new high. And then this person put non-compliance changes their science. Do not comply. Sure seems like it. It seems like it's about compliance and non-compliance and not the science. But hey, who knows, right? Vince Langman, this Angela Bel Camino. Who else is completely exhausted by unvaccinated Americans? And then this, I've tested positive for COVID-19 once again. This is my second time contracting the virus. Stay safe, my friends. XOXO. I've been seeing a lot more of these where they'll take somebody who, like just a person who posted something, and then when they post again, how the irony in the posts. I kind of like that. Critical Thinking 101. He burns down the building, then shows up as the fireman. So the first put out, Fauci is suddenly worried about COVID's impact on society. There is the danger that there will be so many people who are being isolated, who are asymptomatic for the full 10 days, that you could have a major negative impact on our ability to keep society running. Like as if he worries about that. But I thought that was interesting that this person put, he burns down the building and then shows up as the fireman. Yep. Kind of seems like it. At least for like some of the normies. Julie Kelly, Aaron Parnas put, here's a thread of just some accomplishments of Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice from the past year. They have indicted Steve Bannon, prosecuted 727 individuals for the Capitol insurrection, and secured over 130 guilty verdicts from insurrectionists. I love it. Julie Kelly puts the stomp down and says, no one was charged, let alone pleaded guilty to insurrection, you half-wit. I love Julie Kelly. Actually, let's see what Julie Kelly's up to. Let's see. Oh, yeah. This has been ongoing today that Dr. Robert Malone, internationally recognized physician, medical scientist, and inventor of mRNA and DNA technologies, was permanently banned from Twitter on Wednesday. Yeah, he was banned today, but he's over on Getter and he has a Telegram. So if you're interested, you can find him there. All right, I think I'm going to find a video because I need to play something for just a moment or two. Oh, let's see. Where did I have that? Save for shows. Oh, not that one. Well, let's play this quick. I don't know if you guys heard about this or if Breaking showed it. I didn't get to watch the whole show. This is a short clip. So yeah, Project Veritas, CNN Rick Salibi has resigned. So one of the Project Veritas photographers or videographers or whatever, reporters you want to call it, caught up with him.
Hey, Rick, I'm a reporter with Project Veritas. What do you have to say about your recent accusations against crimes against children? Do you still work for CNN, Rick?
Sir, I'm done having my mouth on here. Slowly unzip my zipper.
Project Veritas exposed another creep at CNN.
Yet another producer, Rick Salibi,
at CNN, we've exposed.
So he thinks because you sent me money, you're going to get a nude photo of me and my daughter. Are you insane?
He's asked for nude pictures of your 15-year-old daughter.
Yep, mom and daughter pics. He always says mom and daughter pics.
Rick, do you still work for CNN? Do you have any comments, sir? No, sir. Once again, we ask the questions and they run away.
Project Veritas is on it. All right. So then, I don't know if this was a continuation of that. Yep, it is. Another clip of it. So Disclosed TV put this out. Now Fauci isolation period was cut in half to keep society running. So that's what he said. It was cut in half to keep society running, basically. So this person says, so the 10 days were never necessary? Right? The 10 days were never necessary. Of course not. And then this Eric Metheny again. In a true pandemic, you utilize every able-bodied healthcare professional available. You release any and all available treatments because the only thing that matters is saving lives. But that's not what's happening here. This is a sinister motive behind all of this. Let's see. And then this was more about Dr. Malone being kicked off of Twitter. So this person put out that they believe this is what got him banned. There wasn't even any misinformation. The video verbatim went line through line on the data. This is nothing short of gross censorship at the behest of corporate interests. So Dr. Malone had put out the Pfizer inoculations for COVID-19 more harm than good video. Pfizer's 6-month data, which shows that Pfizer's COVID-19 inoculations cause more illness than they prevent, plus an overview of the Pfizer trial flaws in both design and execution. And then this Nick Hudson put out, so Twitter support, we've been through this before in recent days. Suspending people for reporting facts that you don't like is a very bad look. Yeah, it's a very bad look and worse. I wonder if I really do like Scott Jensen, as you have heard many times before. I might try to go back and play that. Ivor Cummings. I like Ivor Cummings too. For my birthday today, my wife and 5 kids. Oh, I love his accent. I think he's Scottish or Irish. Scottish? Not sure. For my birthday today, my wife and 5 kids made me a pandemic piñata full of corporate totalitarians to beat. Now, should I use the stick or a hurley, perhaps? Choices. Look at this. Oh, that was hilarious. That's not a bad idea, folks. I might have to make me a piñata. And I like this guy. I think it's Spiros. I can't think of his first name, but he's a reporter. He's out of Canada. I like him. I think he's got a Substack now. And I think he's come back like this because he's been booted off before. But anyways, he says, do you feel safe now? Do you feel safe now that Dr. Robert Malone got kicked off for speaking his mind? Huh. And then Juanita Broderick. This is breaking news. So I was minding my own business when I ran across this parked on Rehoboth Avenue, just a few blocks from Joe's Beach House. I've got to get me one of these. Truck. Oh, that's hilarious. I wonder what this guy does for a living. Probably owns his own business. Oh, there's a Trump sticker too. I'm your Huckleberry. Oh, that's funny. I like that. So moving on, insider paper alert, COVID outbreaks disrupts operations of 2 U.S. warships. Well, isn't that wonderful? Gee, we didn't see that coming a mile away. COVID outbreaks disrupt operations of 2 U.S. warships. COVID separate, according to media reports, 19 outbreaks occurred on board 2 U.S. Navy warships, infecting a significant number of their respective crews while disrupting their ongoing operations. All right, I don't want to do that right now, Zoom, so all right, I'm just going to check insider paper because, oh, all right, folks, 14 minutes ago, British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell found guilty of sex crimes. We'll click on this. Oh yeah, maybe he sells sides, Diamond Deuce. I'm sorry, I only have 5x5 open, or I mean DLive open. So YouTube and Foxhole, I'm sorry, I can't keep an eye on everything. And I don't know how much my machine will actually support either. But here it is. British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell found guilty of sex crimes. Does it say like what? Maxwell was convicted by a 12-person jury of 5 of the 6 counts she was facing, including the most serious charge of sex trafficking a minor. Conspiracy to commit sex trafficking of minors carries a maximum 40-year sentence. It could potentially spend the rest of her life behind bars. That'll be interesting to see if that actually happens. The lesser charges have terms of 5 or 10 years. 5 or 10 freaking years for what she did. Wow. Wow. So Maxwell sat passively in the Manhattan courtroom, slowly removing her mask to take sips of water as Judge Allison Nathan read out the verdicts for each of the 6 counts. Nathan offered her sincere thanks to the jury for their service, adding that they served with diligence. No date was set for her sentencing. The charges against Maxwell stem from 1994 to 2004. Wow. Huh. Just keep getting wow. Sorry about that, but yeah, that's my go-to word. Wow. I wonder if it's a thing. It's like a rural thing or something, or a just an area thing. I think my husband says it too. So Juanita Broderick, it looks pretty hopeless for Democrats in 2022, but don't underestimate the ability of the Republicans to screw this up. I agree with that. Tips on how to be an influencer. Get married, have babies, homeschool said babies. Being a mom is the most important influence a woman can have. Nice. I like that. Spooky J put out, so Pfizer gets Comirnaty approved, but an approved vaccine loses EUA liability immunity. So they purposefully delay distribution until the CDC puts it on the childhood schedule, which comes with liability immunity. If Pfizer has zero confidence in its safety, so should you. I thought that was good. I mean, it's not good, but I thought what he stated was very clear and concise. Let's see, butter breath. Once you realize this, it all makes a lot more sense. So Gold Star Dad put this out, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard this before, but it used to be totally unethical and slanderous to tell lies in the press. Guess who we can thank for this? On December 29th, 2012, President Bummer signed H.R. 4310, the 2013 National Defense Authorization Act. Section 1078 of the bill authorizes the use of propaganda inside the U.S., which had previously been banned since 1948, when the Smith-Mundt Act was passed. Let's see. I'm going to skip that one. I wonder if this is for real. A new meaning to rounds. This donut shop also sells guns. So they have the donuts in the case and then they sell guns? I wonder if that's real. Well, there's a donut thing here too, like the baking racks. Isn't that funny? Donuts and guns. The reason I question it is because guns tend to be, I would think they'd be kind of dirty, and you'd want more of a, well, I suppose the donuts are in a kind of a, a sterile environment type of thing, but yeah. Anyway, I think I overthought that. It's amazing people aren't upset they are lied to. Clown World Today. Nobody said the vaccine prevents infection and transmission. COVID mRNA shots stop transmission and stop the spread. Maybe I should play that one. I'll play this one first and see if my video goes. The Civilization is Going Backwards. Savages by Arthur Pulowski. That must be a younger picture of him, or maybe his son or something. I don't know. Doesn't look like him. Let's see if this is as relevant. It's about insect balls and burgers made from protein-rich mealworm. Why do they keep pushing that? We know that why. Yuck. I don't want insects. That's a hard no. It's a hard pass. Forget it. You know what you can do with your insects? Let's see. Chicago One Ray put out, here's a portion of the interview he had on Newsmax. He just an average American who got the right to say what he wants. It's called the First Amendment. Jared Schmeck, the Let's Go Brandon Christmas Eve caller, told Newsmax Monday that his prank call to President Joe Biden encompassed more than just F Joe Biden. It also symbolized the frustration with the administration and their policies. Schmeck, a father from Oregon, told Greg Keller Reports guest host Carl Higbee the Biden administration policies he disapproved of that led him to make that call. What's happening in Afghanistan? They're not even talking about that anymore. There's still people over there, Schmeck said. You've got the supply chain issues. You've got the insane inflation rates right now and the federal vaccine mandates. The list goes on, and the people are tired of it. They got so freaked out about this. I mean, look at all that President Trump endured from these people and all the crap all these celebrities did. And it's just so freaking ridiculous that their heads exploded when this guy did this. Let's go, Brandon. Let's see. Skip that. It's been talked about a lot. USA Trump man put out the vaccine is working so good. Israel yesterday authorized a 4th dose. Just think of that, folks. There are actually people out there that think, let's just keep getting boosted. After your 5th booster shot, we'll know in this magnificent set, we'll throw in this magnificent set of steak knives completely free. Oh my goodness. Stop it, people. Think. So I guess I must have saved these because they were memes. The Sad Truth, MSM. Waukesha Massacre, the mainstream media. Ghislaine Maxwell trial. Let's go, Brandon. Yeah. Well, that was from yesterday too. If you did not know how magical dandelions are for our health, listen to this.
They can only make money off of sick people, not healthy people. Heart medicine, dandelions, and Roundup. That sounds crazy, right? But you know what? They all fit together like a puzzle. You know why? Those little yellow dandelions that grow in your yard that they tell you to hate, they're terrible. They're actually the greatest thing on the earth for your heart. The enzymes and the electrolytes can literally cleanse and strengthen your heart valves and muscles more than anything else. And it's natural and free. The crazy thing is, the same company that owns the heart medicine, that is the highest sold heart medicine in the entire world, that makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year, is the same exact company that owns Roundup. Yeah. They can only make money.
I don't know if that's true, but it sounds like it very well could be. And I have heard a lot of great things about dandelions. All right. This person says there are 4 groups of people right now 1, those who believe the narrative and comply. 2, those who know it, it's BS, but comply anyway. 3, those who are waking up to the lie and are starting to refuse to comply. And 4, those who knew it was BS from the start and refused to ever partake in the lie. This Nick Adams says, instead of replacing Meghan McCain, they should just replace The View. Yeah, they could add an S on the end and actually, you know, have people that had different views. Just a thought. Of course, that would go against their narrative. And, you know, and who wants to be pummeled by the rest of these people on The View? Who wants to be the poor, you know, conservative who is just going to get pummeled and beat up by these people? Anyway, Tim Young put out, CNN named Pfizer CEO Business CEO of the Year. Why do they even pretend to be a news organization? Yeah. Why do they pretend to be a news organization? I think most of us know the answer to that. So got this, euthanasia for COVID patients, Simon Caldwell. Patients admitted to the hospital with COVID-19 can die by euthanasia if doctors decide they might not survive. The New Zealand government has declared. New Zealand, yeah. Are you paying attention yet? I don't remember what that video was about. Aaron Lockhart put out 6 days ago, the CEO of Delta Airlines requested the quarantine period for COVID infections be halved to 5 days to ease the burden on their workforce. When powerful corporate interests ask, they receive. Yeah. Interesting how that works, isn't it? And now Fraudchi came out and said, you know, yep, let's go down to 5 days. I wonder how many of these people he's heard from. Let's see, COVID positive Vermonters with no symptoms clog up ERs. Some Vermonters who are able to find antigen tests and then test positive are clogging up emergency rooms. And Tim Young says, I guess the propaganda worked then. Yeah. So they're clogging up emergency rooms because the test said yes. I wonder who drove them to that fear, you know, to the fear of going in and going, oh my gosh, I got a positive test, but I don't have any symptoms. Really, people? What do you think they're gonna, you know, how are they gonna treat you? Oh, okay, moving on. We live in an age where people keep collapsing for no apparent reason. It makes me wonder if some of these people really think that. I don't think this person probably does, but I think there are people out there that don't get it. Luigi Warren put out, not only that, but we're supposed to pretend not to notice. It's like we're living in some 70s sci-fi movie. Yup. Yeah, so this person put out, same CNN talking heads attacking a dad for saying, let's go, Brandon, were silent regarding one of their top producers being arrested for having sex with a child. Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to jump over to, because I've been playing around with Getter more and Gab. Let's see. I think what I have to do is, let's see, as I look through this, there's a lot of, on my feed, there's a lot of Epoch Times. Oh, cool. We'll listen to this. Let's see.
This is exactly.
Oops. I'm curious to know if Getter will make my computer jump. I'm not sure if that was legit or not.
The way they think, I'm disgusted. This is exactly why my kids are at home.
homeschooled, staying. They want to poison their minds and think that there's something they should fear. You guys are like the boogeyman. You're creating hysteria, and you're creating a generation of children with social anxiety. You're going to create an entire generation of pill-popping junkies. And this is going to be your doing. Because they have no idea what other people's faces and smiles look like. They're going to grow up in a world of angry, bitter people, pissed off citizens who have no idea. This mouth plays a major role in nonverbal communication. I've taken psychology classes. I went through the indoctrination camps. I got my bachelor's degree from Sac State, okay? I went to Sierra College. I made it through. And you know what? I learned that there are people who will stand up for the kids, and there's people like you. People that pretend like you stand up for the kids because you want the paycheck, you want the cool name. You're president. Well, I'm president too, bro. We're both president of a group. Congratulations. But I stand up for the kids. That's the difference. I stand up for the kids in the community. I put my life on the line for these kids. I stand up for everybody's kids in all the communities. You understand? I don't just do it on a 9-to-5 basis. I do it Monday through Sunday, 12 to 12. These women right here, it's sad you beta males let these women lead by example. Okay? I'll tell you right now, you sad little betas, you are seen as weak, minuscule men. And I tell my boy, men like you, those aren't men. You understand? You will be weak, minuscule men the rest of your lives, and I'm not going to let you influence the other boys in this community to be little cucks. You understand? This is a city of men, not betas, non-gender identified people. You understand? Okay? There are men and there are women. And there are betas and there's alphas. And this Omicron crap is a joke. Take the mask off, take a deep breath, go do some yoga, wear your mask, okay? And another time, stop poisoning our children's brains. This is psychological damage. And I know you're looking at me, bro, because you know what I'm saying? It's truth. You know it. You're going to go home and sleep on this, and it's going to bother you. And I'll be back in 2 weeks, bro. I'll be back every 2 weeks. Because I own my own business, I homeschool my kids, and I can do that. Because no one else signs my checks, you understand? We sign your checks. And you best bet, I'm going to run a boatload of people against you guys. There ain't going to be no easy peasy election next time, you understand? There's going to be at least 2 or 3 of you for each position. It is a whitewash. You guys are toast. You will not allow for this. I don't care what you've done in your community, because this is enough. You can go do all the good you want, but when you poison my kid's mind, it's done. Okay? You crossed the line. So I'm letting you know, we're pissed, and it's enough. In the Rock area for 7 years.
Wow, that was quite a speech. I guess I hadn't seen people posting that around. I have to repost that. Let's see. I'm checking my DLive quick to see if am I actually live, or is it just my DLive video load failed. So I'm not sure. Oh, okay. Wang Dang Doodle, are you seeing us okay on, is it 5x5? Because my DLive won't load. Huh. 5x5. Thank you guys. Thank you, Diamond Deuce. Thank you, Biblical Smackdown. Okay, cool. And that was a 3-minute video and it played well on Getter. So I'm pretty sure like my technical problems are Twitter. Thanks, you guys. All right. Let's see. Cool. So I can play videos on Getter. I just wish they had a place where I could put the videos I want to save. The only thing I can think of is that like when I retweet, let's see, or not retweet, but repost, it could be there. Oh, this is interesting. Tommy Robinson. And I wonder if this is the real Tommy Robinson because he's got a check mark. But Ghislaine Maxwell was found guilty by U.S. jury of helping the late financier Jeffrey Epstein sexually abuse teenage girls. She faces up to 65 years. I thought that other site said a different amount of years. And then this is where Dr. Malone, I found Dr. Malone, and he's on Telegram. So he's been, I think he's been putting quite a few, I don't know what you call them in Getter, just posts. I guess he does have a website too. So he says, I'm permanently suspended on Twitter and how to find me, Substack too. The Thought Police said, looks like you have too much to think. I don't know if that's a video or not. Nope. He says that we all knew it would happen eventually. Today it did. Over 500,000 followers gone in a blink of an eye. That means I must have been on the mark, so to speak, over the target. It also means we lost a critical component in our fight to stop these vaccines being mandated for children and to stop the corruptions in our governments, as well as the medical, industrial complex, and pharmaceutical industries. So please spread the word, share this on your Twitter feed or whatever social media venue you wish. My Substack sign up is Who is Robert Malone? Substack is absolutely the best way to see my writings. I appreciate everyone's support and signing up for my newsletter. It truly matters to me. And then he's on Gab and Getter. He's on Gab too. Good. I'll have to see if I'm following him on Gab. And he's got LinkedIn and then his website, www.rw, I think Malone, MALONEMD.com. Traditionally, the Telegram account, which my handle is run by someone else, it's not my own account. They have done a good job auto-posting from Twitter, and I have personally thanked the person who does this. I only have one of me, and getting scientific knowledge and info pushed out is critical in this battle. It has 100,000 followers, and not sure how that will work now. In the meantime, I am not going away. In fact, every door is closed, is another open. Stay tuned, and thank you for all your support. It means so much to me and Jill. Robert. Cool. Good for him. Okay, this auto settings thing is really annoying me. Stop it. I've never had that pop up on Zoom before, and I'm not sure why it would. I do not know what's going on. My nose is stuffy, and it's kind of weird. It just happened when I went on air. Anyway, okay, that's why I sound kind of stuffed up, I think. Let's keep going and see what's on. Let's see, like if I want to search something, I think it's, oh, there it is. Let's see. Breaking 911. It's breaking today. Breaking 911 had put out Ghislaine Maxwell found guilty in sex trafficking trial. They put that out a couple times. Florida man receives $2.1 million in PPP loans, bought Lamborghini, Rolex, and Hublot watches. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Urgent, armed and dangerous. Cops searching for 14-year-old boy accused of killing 3 people inside Texas convenience store. New York and Florida both break daily COVID-19 case record. Breaking Angela Kukowski, manager whose clients included the Kardashians, found murdered. Oh, that's pretty big news. Angela Kukowski, manager whose clients included the Kardashians, found murdered. Detectives from Los Angeles Police Department are investigating the murder of Angie Kukowski in Sherman Oaks. The LA-based manager was known to have an A-list clients included the Kardashians, Nicki Minaj, and Kanye West. That's kind of interesting, folks. Oh, her boyfriend's been arrested. 49-year-old Jason Barker was arrested on suspicion of murder. He's booked at Van Nuys. Huh. I don't know who that is. But conspiracy investigators, that catches your attention. Oh, creepy. Some of these I can't even read. Gross. Sad. Disgusting. Let's see, what's this? Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont calls up National Guard to help distribute COVID tests and masks. Oh boy. How about insider paper? I know I had they had the Ghislaine thingy. Let's see. COVID bogs down Biden in winter of discontent. Joe promised to follow the science when he took over from Donald Trump, but a year later, record infections, testing, shortfalls, and stubborn vaccine resistance have turned one of his presidency's political strong points into a growing liability. The majority of his political whatever you want to call them, strategies is all a liability for us. Paris again makes face mask compulsory outdoors. Outdoors. Oh my gosh. Earthquake strikes Greek island of Crete. I did not hear that today. So there's a 5.7 magnitude earthquake struck off the Greek island of Crete. And the U.S. remains gravely concerned by Russian troops near Ukraine. I see Biden, Putin to hold phone call on Thursday at the White House. Greece bans music in bars over rising COVID cases. I'm so sick of these words. Aren't you tired of hearing COVID cases? All of these COVID words. Let's see. Yeah, all right. I'm just so tired of talking and hearing about COVID. I know it's important to the news, but so this is Gab now. At least on Gab, I can put, well, I could do the same thing as Getter, but I did have a little Gab group of my own. It's private, just me, where I could put my stories in. I'm not sure if that's going to work or not. But I do like to do the videos, and I also like to do the, some of the memer stuff is good. Anyway, the CDC withdraws use of PCR tests for COVID, finally admits it can't differentiate between flu and COVID. Well, we know that, but do the normies know it yet? Why are they standing in all those long lines if the COVID test doesn't work in the first place? I have so many questions. Oh my gosh, person like wanted that out. Oh, sweet. Oh my goodness. That's a big kitty. All right. Well, I'm coming up on the top of the hour, guys. And thank you for tuning in to 5x5 today. You know, Biblical Smackdown, you put once they flip on the 5G, a lot of Vax people are going to have a problem. When are they going to flip on the 5G? Are they doing it slowly, like rolling it out? I wonder if there's a date. Other than like our kind of channels, I don't hear about 5G too much, like not in the news. They've been kind of quiet about 5G. All right, so I will drop my share. And if you want to end the stream, Laura, that'd be great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, chat. Thanks, YouTube. Thanks, Foxhole. Thanks, DLive. I'm going to see if my DLive comes up. Failed to load.